Next, let's paint the town red, and just about every other color. In the Paper Mario series, we always challenge ourselves to bring something fresh to the action-adventure genre. And this time, in Paper Mario Color Splash, the theme is colors and paint.
This was quite possibly one of the absolute worst reveals for a game I've ever seen. Paper Mario was not in a good state. It was in the middle of an identity crisis, with 2 games in a row that abandoned the original formula that people loved about those first 2 games. These weren't even consistent with each other, and Sticker Star in particular was nearly universally panned by fans. I went on about how Sticker Star was what killed the identity of the series, but there was still a chance of recovery. But on that fateful day, March 3rd, 2016, a new Nintendo Direct aired, and we were greeted with one of the most tone-deaf reveals ever.
Action-adventure genre.
People were still upset about Sticker Star, and this reveal was the final nail in the coffin that was classic Paper Mario. It looked to be exactly what we feared would happen. It looked like Sticker Star 2. There's so much wrong with this trailer. It was presented with practically zero fanfare. They just rolled into it like it was any other game. Perhaps Nintendo doesn't see Paper Mario as a big deal, but the fans did. And the way this was just casually brought up was seen as a slap in the face. It didn't help that everything after looked more like the stuff people hated about Sticker Star. The overemphasis on paper, the bland featureless toads, even having a shot reminiscent of a part in Sticker Star's intro with a ton of these boring toads. But the biggest insult of all, it was referred to as an action-adventure game.
In the Paper Mario series, we always challenge ourselves to bring something fresh to the action-adventure genre.
Not as an RPG. This was the boiling point. The fans had enough. They were angry, and they let everyone know just how angry they were. Unlike Sticker Star, where there was some optimism going into it, here we knew what to expect from the game because of what came before, and we were not having any of it. This was possibly the lowest point in the Paper Mario fandom. At the very least, top 2, but its competition is for another time. But interestingly, while fans of the first few games were banding together to complain about this game, there was a bit of resistance. Not many people would come to Sticker Star's defense, but for Color Splash, there was a decent amount of people standing up for it. Whether they were fans of the older games still willing to give it a shot, or people new to the series who thought it looked good, doesn't matter. There was a lot of arguing around this game. It was not a very pleasant time to care about Paper Mario no matter what side of the fence you were on. But that was then. It's been several years since the game came out. The smoke had been cleared for a long time. I'll admit, I was one of the people angry about this game. You should already know what I feel about Sticker Star, but here's a hint. I don't like it very much. And this game really upset me. It in part helped fuel my hatred towards Sticker Star. Oh, I would still hate that game regardless of what came after, but the fact that it had a lasting effect on the series just made that hatred grow. I hated this game's mere existence because of what it represented. I didn't partake in much of the discourse surrounding this game. I got in a couple arguments, but not much else. I mostly kept channeling my hatred into Sticker Star, mostly ignoring Color Splash. I didn't care what other people thought about it. I didn't buy it. I was just going to boycott the game silently and move on to things I cared more about, namely Sticker Star. Sticker Star is the main reason I started reviewing this series. It was the main driving force of this marathon. But now it's done. I've expressed in my sticker comment video, the resentment I've had towards the game has all been released with my review of it. While I still hate the game, I've moved on and made my peace with it. But now I've got Color Splash right in front of me. I didn't buy this game when it came out. I didn't play it before this video. I didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't even look at reviews or Let's Plays or streams of it. I've heard about some stuff, but I was largely unspoiled because I just didn't want anything to do with the game. It was because of my hatred of Sticker Star that I did not want to even look at its successor. My resentment towards Sticker Star was in part fueled by this game. That resentment is gone now, and my resentment towards Color Splash was tied to Sticker Star, so without that, I don't even know what to feel about Color Splash anymore. Now, instead of feeling insulted by the mere existence of the game, I'm able to view it, well, as a game. I'm at a pretty neutral perspective with this game now. While still not completely unbiased, I think this is probably the best position I can be in to look at this game. So I suppose it's finally time to see what this game is truly like. Is it just Sticker Star 2, or is it something more?
In the red corner!
One of the most contentious aspects of Sticker Star was its lack of story. The Paper Mario series is known and loved for its stories, writing, and characters. Paper Mario 64 was rather simple in plot, but it made up for it with strong characters and writing. Thousand Year Door kept the strong characters and writing, improved them dramatically, and added a compelling main plot to go with it. Super Paper Mario hyper-focused on its main plot. While the individual chapter stories tended to not be nearly as strong, it still delivered on strong characters and writing alongside what is possibly the deepest story in a Mario game. It had been set in stone that Paper Mario was all about telling compelling stories with charming characters and humorous and witty writing. But Sticker Star eroded that stone. Sticker Star had sanitized all the uniqueness of Paper Mario, reducing the story down to a simple Bowser kidnapping Peach plot without any of the substance 64 provided to it. It reduced all the charming and unique characters to bland featureless toads and removed speaking roles from some of the most beloved characters that had returned, such as Bowser and Luigi. The writing had been reduced to exclusively focus on humor instead of the drama and emotion of previous games, but still wasn't able to match the humor of those games, relying on a barrage of unfunny paper jokes. Everything that was Paper Mario wasn't Sticker Star. And so when Color Splash was revealed, and it looked to be a continuation of all that was Sticker Star, the assumption was made that that would include the story, or, well, lack of story. Before the game even came out, people assumed that this game would also lack story. So, does it lack story? The answer to that is a bit complicated, but it's kinda yes and no. Let's get into it. Spoiler for this game and the previous games. So the game breaks series tradition right off the bat by not having a story being told at the start with "Ahem, today," or some variant of that. Even Sticker Star did that. This kind of further cements the separation of Paper Mario from its roots. We even see Mario's house, but it's not the one from the first three games. It appears that Sticker Star really did mark the beginning of a new era for the series, one that is detached from the first three in their traditions, and, as we'll see, makes its own traditions. But anyways, we start with Peach and a Toad arriving at Mario's house with a letter. And when he opens it, it turns out to be the mangled corpse of a Toad that has been completely drained of blood. It turns out to be a Toad that was drained of his color. The Toad also had a stamp on it that Mario recognizes coming from Prism Island. So the three of them get on a boat and head over to find out what happened. They reach Port Prisma and find there are many colorless spots all around and even more Toads devoid of color. But the center of town has some kind of mechanism that opens up, revealing a paint can. After giving it a good ol' thwack, it's revealed to be Huey. Huey is upset and starts yelling at Mario, although unlike Kirsty, it's actually justified. And he calms down once Peach says they thought he was just a regular paint can. Peach tells Huey that they're here because of the drained Toad that was sent to them, but before anything can happen, the Toad that was brought with them starts yelling. They investigate and find, am I interrupting something? Okay, but seriously, they find the source of the missing colors, a Shy Guy sucking out the paint from the Toad with a straw. The Toad hands over some cards he has before he's fully drained, but Mario can't use them without paint, so Huey offers to be wrung out, which gives Mario paint, but turns Huey flat. With the paint, they are able to defeat the Shy Guys and bring color back to the Toad and fill in all the spots devoid of color in the port. Huey explains that the fountain in the center of town is the source of paint for all of Prism Island, thanks to the 6 big paint stars hooked up to it, which are now gone. After realizing that they are gone, Huey is about ready to give up until he smells one nearby. It's just a mini paint star, but as they approach it, an airship flies off carrying a giant bucket of paint.
Dear God.
So they set off to follow the trail of mini paint stars as they lead to the big ones to recover them. Each of the big paint stars is guarded by one of the Koopalings, but Mario and Huey are able to beat them and bring the stars back to port. The big paint stars are sentient and share their memories with Mario and Huey. Each one shows a bit of the attack on the port, which reveals that Bowser was responsible for this, because who else would it be? Each one of these is practically showing the same thing. There's not much revealed in each, as it's pretty obvious what's going on just from the first memory. Bowser, covered in black paint, threw the big paint stars away and is commanding his Shy Guys to steal all the paint they can. Also, Kamek was the one who mailed the colorless Toad to Peach. I guess to lure her and Mario here. Only the last one gives any significant new information, being how this all started. Bowser was witnessing the Toads just playing with the paint, and he wanted to celebrate Pride Month, so he jumped in the fountain to paint his shell. But he accidentally mixed all the colors, creating black paint, which then covered his whole body. After the first big paint star is recovered, Bowser himself shows up in Port Prisma to taunt you. What's this? actual dialogue from Bowser? He doesn't say much, just that he harnessed the power of black paint and that he'll share it with the rest of the world. Also, he kidnaps Peach. Big surprise. But Peach left behind a pre-recorded message on a Hollow Peach. She'll periodically send more of these to tell you what she's learned, but the information is minimal. You don't really learn anything new from these, just that Bowser is acting differently and is planning on covering everything in black paint, which we already knew. But so Huey and Mario save all the big paint stars, which create a rainbow road, and with the help of Luigi, they drive to Bowser's castle. They find Peach has been drained of her color, and that he's been creating black paint with all the colors that the Sniffets have been sucking up and putting in all these giant buckets.
No.
And he's using the black paint to color in these giant bonsai bills, which when they detonate cover the area in black paint, which is how he's planning on covering the world. You actually get a demonstration of this earlier in the game when one of the bonsai bills gets launched. So to stop this, they set off a ton of giant bombs to destroy this factory. They reach Bowser and start beating the black paint off of him, and when enough of it is gone, Bowser starts coming to his senses. But he doesn't have any memory of what happened, showing that he's actually been possessed by the black paint. The paint takes control again, but with Huey turning back into a 3D can, he's able to absorb all the black paint covering Bowser, defeating him. They paint Peach and all make their escape as the castle crumbles around them, but Huey stays behind to stop the black paint contained from falling back onto the ground. Huey wrings out the entire castle and goes all the way to space to get rid of the paint, seemingly sacrificing himself in the process. Everyone celebrates the defeat of Bowser, with Mario still thinking about Huey, though it is revealed that he survived. Or at least that his corpse fell back into the fountain, but I think we all know the intention was that he lived. So as you can tell, there's a little more to it than Sticker Star, but still not as much as the first 3 games. Now, it could be argued that on a surface level, the main plot is about on par with 64, but what made 64 special in spite of a simple plot was the world, side plots, and all the extra details that made everything come together. The world you travel in is an important part of Paper Mario. To really care about it, it needs to feel like a place people live in. Prism Island is a much more interesting location than the setting of Sticker Star. That game only had a single town and not much else inhabiting the world, so it really didn't feel like a real place. Prism Island only has one town as well, Port Prisma, but there's enough other stuff scattered around to make it feel like an actual place. You have multiple homes away from the port, tourist attractions, a restaurant, cafes, train works, an excavation site, piers, a hotel, a park, a circus, a military base of sorts, other smaller islands with their own stuff, including a lighthouse and various ruins. There's a lot more here than what was in Sticker Star. Now all these things are pretty spread out, the world is still fairly segmented. Like, you'd have to travel pretty far to get to a hotel from the port just looking at this map. But just look at this map. You can see how there's much more here than if we look at Sticker Star's map. This does a lot to help the world feel like an actual place. Now the previous games still do more by having multiple towns throughout the game, while Color Splash only has Port Prisma, but it's at least a step in the right direction. Port Prisma itself is a nice location, and funnily enough is kinda similar to Rogueport, even in layout. This is like if Rogueport was a nice place to live. It's not hostile like Rogueport, you got a paint fountain as the centerpiece rather than a noose, and the town is much cleaner and not full of thieves and bandits. Now it doesn't have quite the rich character that Rogueport had, but it still has its own character and charm, just not as cutthroat. And well, it easily surpasses Decalburg. And hey, while the town doesn't have many places for people to live, you can see some more buildings in the background in a couple places, so it implies it's bigger than the playable area. It's also nice that some story-related events happen here after the intro. Bowser comes back to kidnap Peach, and each of the paint stars are brought back here to show you a bit of their memories with you, and all the characters you meet along the way will celebrate when you bring one back. The Toad Rescue Squad also operates here, and you'll be coming back to talk to their leader. There's a post office again, where you'll get letters from various characters you meet along the way, and you can show this Toad the Hollow Peaches you find. At the beginning on the west side, there's a broken bridge that gets fixed once you find a bridge expert, and these toads are always excited when you cross it. One recurring thing is this toad was growing a plant because he was in a friend group that has since parted ways, but he got a letter from one of his friends, Piper, that said, "When flowers bloom in our old hangout spot, I'm certain we'll meet again." And it came with a seed. Every time the plant grows a little more, another member of the friend group arrives, and each has their own tale about Piper. Eventually, the final friend besides Piper arrived, but he reveals that Piper has died. But a seed falls out of the tree they planted, and out comes a Patooey, who the toads call Piper. I am a little confused if this is Piper or his offspring. Piper died and the seed he mailed was his seed, but when a new Patooey was born, it was still Piper? I don't know how Patooeys work, but whatever. It's a charming side story that progresses throughout the game. The reveal that Piper died actually caught me off guard. I was joking that he died before it happened, but I didn't actually expect it to be the case. Now, in true Paper Mario fashion, his death is undone, and I'm not sure I like that. I think it could have been a nice, bittersweet story about how a dying friend set up his old friend group to come back together even though he wouldn't have lived to see it. But oh well, it's still charming, and it's stuff like this that gets you to care about a town and the people in it. It's stuff like this that Sticker Star was lacking. Even though Prism Island isn't as fleshed out as the worlds of previous games, I still like the place a lot more than Sticker Star's setting, just because it actually tried. One key element to the stories of the series is that there is an overarching plot that stays the whole game, but you mostly experience in pieces. The games are divided into chapters, each chapter being a new area with its own contained story that ends when you get the MacGuffin of the game. These self-contained stories often are largely disconnected from the main plot outside of having to get the MacGuffin in the end, though there are examples of the main plot intersecting with them. Like in Thousand Year Door, a few chapters will have the X-Nauts be the main threat, or attack at the end, or have the Shadow Sirens interfere. But mostly these stories have little to do with the overarching plot. Even Sticker Star continues this, albeit very minimally, to the point where the story just doesn't exist most of the time. Color Splash does things differently. It's not cleanly divided into chapters like the others. All the events do happen in a linear order, and you could say that everything that happens in between each of the big paint stars is a chapter, but it's not presented that way, and there isn't much in the way of entire chapter-spanning stories. It's more like there are a bunch of mini-stories or scenarios that are contained to a single level, with some of them spanning into multiple levels, and others starting in one chapter to be continued in a different chapter. Most of the big paint stars have some kind of small story or at least some kind of objective, though some are more involved than others. Take the red paint star, the first one you go after. There isn't much of a story to this one, but there is an objective that spans multiple levels. You need to get into the Crimson Tower, but to do that you need to find 3 superpowered toads that are the keys to the front gate. This quest spans multiple levels, as each toad is in a different level and has different requirements to get to the tower. The yellow paint star is similar. You arrive at Chateau Chantarella, where the professor lives, but he and his pet chain chomp princess are missing, so the objective is to find them. You find the professor in Mondo Woods, and he's devastated that his princess is still missing, but you find her and nearly get eaten by her in this dig site. So you use a bone to lure her back to the professor. Though that's where that ends. The next couple levels are detached from the professor and princess. There's still more to those than there is to the blue and green paint stars, as they just don't have any overarching story or objective. They have small single-level stories such as Dark Blue Inn, which is reminiscent of the Enigma Mansion. It's a haunted hotel where spooky things keep happening, like one room constantly calling the reception with no one on the line, or these books that just keep getting thrown all over the floor after being cleaned up. I like this line about them trying to call Luigi first. Kind of foreshadowing Luigi's Mansion 3. Because of all this, the hotel is closed, so you investigate and find out that the ghosts of toads, who were previous patrons of the hotel, are responsible. You help each one out and they all go to the dining room for a tea party, which after you provide the kettle, they finally ascend. This is a neat little single-level story, but it doesn't connect to anything around it, even less than the Enigma Mansion. It's part of the blue big paint star path, but that ends with you and a bunch of rescue toads attempting to infiltrate this military base. It has nothing to do with the inn. The green one doesn't even have anything like that. The Dragonon fossil gets painted and flies to the volcano, but he's just there to help you get around the level. That's it. Aside from the circus at the end, there's nothing here. But then there's the purple and orange stars, which actually have you follow a simple multi-level story the entire time. For the purple one, you rescue some toads whose ship is being attacked by Shy Guys, and after the ocean is colored, you team up with the captain on a quest to find Fortune Island. But to get there, you need to cross the Lost Sea, and only one person has been known to cross it, the legendary captain. Yeah, that's his name, nothing else. In fact, this ship belonged to him. After he reached Fortune Island, only his ship returned. And so you journey across the seas with the captain and his crew, making a stop at Vortex Island as the titular vortex is in the way. After clearing it by going into some weird parallel dimension, they navigate to Lighthouse Island, where a giant wall of darkness blocks the path and can only be cleared by turning on the lighthouse, once again using the parallel dimension to do so. And finally they reach the Lost Sea, where they navigate using pages from the legendary captain's journal, which was found on the ship, and they reach Fortune Island. By exploring the parallel world, once again, you find the legendary Captain Grillin, and you introduce him to the other captain before finding the treasure. which is the big paint star. Oh, also Wendy is here. The orange star is all about this train, the Sunset Express. You got a glimpse of it earlier, but now it's carrying a large party of toads on their way to Tangerino Grill as its last run before being decommissioned. The train has been stopped because the tracks have been destroyed by an unknown cause, and the passengers are all hungry and annoyed by how long they're waiting. By assembling the Blue Toad Rescue Squad to fix the tracks, the train is ready to move, and then it gets crushed by a thwomp. So the train is moved to Toad Train Works to be repaired. You've been here before and met the foreman, who is an old toad, not that you can tell, who is contemplating retirement. When the train gets there, a bunch of Shy Guys are running amok and you have to help clear them out and repair the train. The passengers are getting pretty cranky though, and use you as a way to vent their frustrations. But the repair job is done and the foreman is ready to retire, just like the train. Before he does though, the workers show their gratitude for all the work he's done. And also Mario. Later you get a letter from the foreman where he says the Sunset Express isn't actually going to be decommissioned, so he also decides to cancel his retirement. But with the train finally arriving at Tangerino Grill, there's still more problems. The customers haven't got their food. Shy Guys are wreaking havoc in the kitchen. So of course you need to get rid of them and help prepare the food to finally satisfy the toads. But there's one more customer, the VIP, who is very picky. But Mario is able to satisfy even him. However, the story isn't done as a rock slide has caused the train to stop again. Mario takes care of it, but then the train is taken over by Larry, who actually was the VIP the whole time. And finally, Mario is able to help all the rescue toads who are on the train and defeat Larry. These two paint stars are easily the best ones because they tell an actual story. Now they don't go as deep as some of the chapters in Thousand Year Door, but I'd say they are quite on par with 64's chapter stories. The only thing is that they're lacking in more unique characters, but that's a different issue. Overall, I guess the chapter lineup is mixed. It wasn't focused on dividing everything into chapters, but it still does have a clear divide with the paint stars. Having a lot more small one-level stories isn't an issue, but when two of the paint stars have fairly good multi-level stories, and the others don't, it makes them feel a bit emptier in comparison. And the green star was pretty weak overall. At least the blue star had the hotel and the park in addition to Fort Cobalt. The green star doesn't really have anything outside the circus. Now let's talk about characters. Paper Mario is known for its colorful cast of characters. Each of the first three games are full of unique and likable characters. Sticker Star barely had any characters, and the ones there were pretty bland and uninteresting. Color Splash, much like Sticker Star, has a pretty small cast outside of the Toads. There are plenty of Toads, and specific Toad characters, but I'll save them for later. So let's start with Mario. Mario's still a plank of wood, moving on. Okay, third time I've made that joke, but much like Sticker Star, there's not much to talk about with Mario. Mario being a mostly silent protagonist, only really talking in small sentences and never having any written dialogue in games like Paper Mario, is very dependent on the story of the game he's in to make him more interesting. The first three games made Mario interesting in a few different ways, mainly with how other characters interacted with him. In Sticker Star and Color Splash, Mario only really has one other character to interact with, unlike the first two games which had a group of partners with you, and Super which had the other playable characters. So for these games, he's reliant on the single companion he gets. Enough has been said about how Kirsty is an example of how only having one character with you can go wrong, but what about Huey? Huey is pretty similar to Kirsty in a lot of ways. His role is practically identical, being the guardian of the paint fountain, whose purpose was to stop the black paint should it be brought about, as Kirsty was the guardian of the sticker comet, whose purpose was to prevent the royal stickers to be used by the wrong hands. He's also the source of Mario's main abilities and method of attacking and interacting with the world, much like Kirsty was. He also has a pretty similar personality to Kirsty, being pretty loudmouthed and very sassy, and a bit cowardly at times. But Huey is a much more pleasant character than Kirsty, who was very unlikable. He's just a fun guy to be around. After you apologize for whacking him at the beginning, he's just like, wanna grab a burger or something? And I'd totally have a burger with this paint can. This dude is chill and actually pretty funny at times. He can get pretty mad, but he never feels condescending when that happens, and he's never unjustly mad at Mario. When looking for the mountain sage on Daffodil Peak and finding just a cardboard cutout, he gets upset and yells, "Shenanigans! We've been had!" and proceeds to take it out on the gatekeeper below, and unlike Kirsty's rants, it's hilarious. He says shenanigans a few times and I love it. I love this bit where he stops to talk about how the place seems dangerous and that if something catastrophic were to happen, he will protect you, even throw his body in front of whatever to protect you. Only for a giant chain chomp to burst through the wall and Huey just bolts without you. I would be mad at Kirsty if she pulled that, but my man Huey? I could never be mad at Huey. He's also more expressive than Kirsty, which adds a lot more charm to him. Huey is a fun companion, and way better than Kirsty, who was unbearably unlikable. Now, Kirsty being unlikable wasn't the issue. It was that she never grew out of being unlikable. She had no character arc. Huey is just kind of a bro the whole game. He's a bit more reminiscent of Goombella than Kirsty, though Kirsty did feel like an unpleasant Goombella as well. While this does make Huey a lot more fun and enjoyable to be around, it kinda makes him more shallow. He's Kirsty without the unlikability, which I will take over Kirsty any day, but he also doesn't have a character arc. He doesn't change at all, and he makes a similar sacrifice to Kirsty. Now, him being likable does make that sacrifice actually a bit sad, and it makes the reveal that he survived not insulting like with Kirsty, just because we like the character. But there really isn't anything more to it than that. So while I do like Huey, he doesn't do much to stand out amongst the sea of characters, and especially the partners from the previous games. He feels much more refreshing coming off of Sticker Star with Kirsty, but had Sticker Star not existed and Color Splash was after Super, I doubt he would really be all that memorable. He's still a good character, there just should have been more to him. His purpose was apparently to stop the black paint, but they don't build on that concept at all. And I think they should. It would add a lot to Huey. The way he sacrifices himself at the end was also done much better. In order to defeat Bowser, he needs to absorb the black paint from him, which takes a toll on him. And in order to stop all the paint in the castle from spilling, he tells the others to leave him as he wrings out the entire castle to get rid of it all. But he'll be back, only to immediately say he hates lying to them as he doesn't expect he'll return. Now he does survive, which adds another fake death to the series, but I think this is one of the least offensive instances of it. Grotus should have died, Loveby should have stayed dead, Kirsty should have stayed dead, but Huey, I think it's fine that he lived. The big paint stars are living sentient beings like the Star Spirits, but they're not really characters. The Star Spirits were pretty important beyond just getting the ability to defeat Bowser, and they had a few scenes where they give exposition and point you in the right direction. They also each had their own distinct personalities, and a few of them had some cooler moments, like when Scalar gets captured by Bo after escaping Tubba Blubba, when Twink meets Muscular and they have a moment together, and when Misc helps you escape an erupting volcano. The big paint stars are just talking MacGuffins, nothing more. Each one will share a bit of their memory of what happened to them in the port, but it's all pieces to the same scene, and most of them don't really add anything we don't already know. Like, yep, Bowser did this. Yeah, Bowser's continuing to do this. Yeah, they certainly are collecting paint, which we already know. The only one that really adds anything is the last one, where it reveals that Bowser was just trying to paint his shell and accidentally made black paint. It's not very interesting. And these guys don't even have distinct personalities, so it feels a bit pointless for them to talk. Bowser Jr. is strangely absent from this game. He made his Paper Mario debut in Sticker Star, but one game later and he's gone. Kind of a shame. When he's done well, I rather like Bowser Jr. Kamek is in this game, but his role has been drastically reduced to the point where I'm not even sure why he's here. He doesn't have any relevance to the story. I guess he was the one who mailed the toad to Peach, but really anyone could have done that. You encounter him a couple times and that's it. He doesn't try to impede your progress like he did at various points in Sticker Star, though he does have a slight role in the gameplay, but for the story, yeah, there's nothing. So Luigi is pretty much the same role as he did in Sticker Star. It's just a cameo in some levels, and it's disappointing, but at least there's a little more to him. Every time you find him, he sends you a letter. They're just various hints, so it's not very interesting. But it's funny that each one starts with him describing an aspect of himself to remind Mario who he is. Like he doesn't know if Mario remembers him. Mario, you do remember me, right? Your brother with the green hat with the L on it, who's also a plumber? But oh, we grew up together. Please tell me you remember me, right? Luigi does actually do one thing in the story. When you get each of the paint stars, they will color something in the world. But you don't see what the green one does, but you do hear Luigi when it does. When all the paint stars are together, they form a rainbow road to Bowser's castle, but you can't climb it. So Luigi shows up in a cart and helps you up. It's small, and I do want more, but at least gets to do something. Peach has more of a role than she did in Sticker Star, but it's still rather minimal. She's with you at the beginning and hangs in Port Prisma, which is nice, but as soon as you get one big paint star, Bowser kidnaps her, and you don't see her again until the end of the game. She does leave behind these Hollow Peaches, which relay a pre-recorded message at various points in the game, which is neat, basically the same as her emails in Thousand Year Door. But Thousand Year Door had playable Peach sections where you uncover things that Peach then tells Mario through the emails. Here it's just occasionally you get an update from Peach. It's like if the playable parts in Thousand Year Door were just cut and you only got the emails. The contents of the Hollow Peaches are also not very interesting. She's just relaying information you've already learned before, or talking about not knowing where she is. The second to last one basically tells you what Bowser's plan is. He wants to show the entire world the power of black paint. Seems pretty easy to tell that the goal is to cover everything in black paint. It's pretty simple. But then the final one, she says she now knows what Bowser's plan is before getting taken away. You didn't know before? There isn't anything new to the plan. It really is just covering everything in black paint. It's not like Thousand Year Door where you learn that Grodus wants to use the demon sealed in the Palace of Shadow to take over the world, but then there's the twist that Peach isn't able to relay in time that she's needed for it to happen. No, it's just he wants to cover the world in black paint. Maybe the giant bonsai bills being the method of spreading it was intended to be the twist, but that's not really much of a twist. We see one go off much earlier, and Peach even talks about it in an earlier Hollow Peach. The issue is that there really isn't much to the plot, so there's nothing for Peach to talk about. The goal of the black paint is so simple that there's really nothing to elaborate on. They could have focused more on Bowser being possessed as the main subject of the Hollow Peaches. We get a glimpse of that where she notices Bowser acting a bit different, but not much. Although I did like the one where she mentions how Bowser talks about the power of the black paint for hours, and I think they're trying to make it sound like he's giving evil, threatening monologues about it, but I can't help but imagine Bowser just being excited by the black paint and giddily sharing his special interest with Peach, and it's adorable. But anyways, Peach was disappointing, but at least we got more than Sticker Star. I know, that's a low bar. And now for Bowser, and yeah, he's also pretty disappointing. He does get to talk a little bit, but it's not much. And also, it's really the black paint talking. The black paint is the real villain here, not Bowser. I do like that Bowser actually wasn't up to anything. He just wanted to paint his shell, but accidentally created black paint, which possessed him. But I wish they did more with the concept. We get hints of that with the Hollow Peaches, but that's it. We don't get his minions' perspectives on how Bowser is acting. You could have had Kamek or any of the Koopalings say anything about how Bowser is acting weird. But no, a few lines is all we get. I do like the moment where you knock off enough paint for Bowser to briefly come to his senses, and he has no idea what is going on before being retaken by the paint, but that's where that ends. The black paint is an interesting concept, but they don't do anything with it. They don't even really do anything with the concept of Bowser being possessed. And they say he acts differently, but maybe it's the lack of dialogue, but he really doesn't feel different from Bowser. Why did the black paint mail the toad to Peach anyways? It's something Bowser would do, but why would the paint do it? In one of the Hollow Peaches, she says he did it to demonstrate his power or whatever, but like, why? Maybe if, like, the black paint gains the personality and intelligence of whoever is covered in it? That's probably it, and that could have been interesting, but they need to actually explore the concept. As it is, it's just some evil gloop that makes Bowser stronger. This game does a much better job with its story than Sticker Star, but it's still severely lacking in a lot of areas. Now, there are a bunch of characters I've yet to talk about. The bosses. At the end of my Sticker Star video, I had mentioned that I'd been planning on reviewing it for years, and how I even written a bit of a review in a notebook while I was still in school. In that notebook, while discussing Bowser Jr.'s inclusion in that game, and how it was interesting to finally see him in a Paper Mario game, I had also said, maybe next time the Koopalings would appear. Apparently, I was wishing upon a monkey's paw, or perhaps the Sticker Comet itself, because that's exactly what happened. The Koopalings are an odd bunch of minions. Originally coming from Mario 3 and also Mario World, they dropped off the face of the earth aside from one appearance in Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga. For a while it just seemed like they were forgotten, until New Super Mario Bros. Wii brought them back. And at the time it was cool to see them back, but then they came back again, and again. While some people exaggerate how much the Koopalings appear, they've not yet appeared in a full 3D Mario platformer, they've still managed to cement their importance to Nintendo when all 7 of them were put in Mario Kart 8 over characters like Birdo, Diddy Kong, and even Bowser Jr. himself. At least a couple of those got fixed later, although I'm still waiting for Diddy. Please, Booster Pass, make this age poorly.
Finally!
But the Koopalings went from being forgotten to getting numerous appearances in spin-offs and dominating the 2D platformers. It's gotten a bit tiring seeing them all the time, and they're here in Color Splash as well. I don't hate or even dislike the Koopalings. I think conceptually they're cool, and I do rather like Iggy and Lemmy. But the main issue with them is the moment you walk into the boss level and you see that the first boss is a Koopaling, well, you already know exactly what all the bosses are. This was at its worst in New Super Mario Bros. Wii, where you fought each of them twice as almost all bosses in the game. While just one game prior, each world had a unique boss that was miles more interesting than the Koopaling pattern. And there's a similar issue with Color Splash. Because the Koopalings are the villains of each chapter equivalent, that's all you get. In all the previous games, even Sticker Star, as poorly done as it was, each chapter had a unique villain. But here, it's just the Koopalings. Once you see Morton in the Crimson Tower, you know exactly who all will be the villains of the rest of the game. The mystery of who you might be up against is completely out the window. The most mystery you'll get is what order they will appear in. It's disappointing, but at least their portrayal here is better than usual, although they are still hit and miss. Morton is the big dumb idiot character. There's not much here. He has a couple funny moments, but otherwise is one of the most boring Koopalings. Iggy is kind of a fun character. He has some funny lines, but there's so little of him. He doesn't do anything outside of his boss fight, so he's one of the more forgettable ones. It's a shame because I usually like Iggy. Ludwig also first appears in his boss fight, but they do more with him as he commands his secret anti-Mario weapon, the Super Ludship. There's a funny moment when it's introduced and it's all imposing, until you get a different angle and it isn't complete because he got here so fast. Next is... Wendy. Wendy was always the worst Koopaling next to Larry, because her whole personality is just being a girl. It's all the same tropes the girl characters get when anyone decides to make a team with varying personalities, but only one of them is female, so they make that their only defining character trait. It's boring, and Wendy doesn't offer anything beyond that. You know, you can have a female character be a meathead or crazy or any of the other personality traits male characters are given, even if she's the only woman around. Ideally, you would have more female characters to avoid them just being the girl on the team, and also because women are half the population, so it's kind of weird that male is considered the default and female is something that is considered different and other. Like when making a group of characters and you give each one a distinctive personality and female is considered a personality. If you're going to have only one woman, at least make her interesting. Anyways, Wendy's portrayal in this game is exactly the same boring I'm the girl portrayal she always was. And it's just as boring and lame here. Morton is pretty boring, but at least his personality isn't his gender. Wendy continues to be the worst one. She doesn't even do anything in her chapter. She is the least significant one. She just appears at the end because they needed a boss for it. At least the next one is better. He's actually one of the best ones. Wait, the next one is Larry? Larry is one of the best ones? Larry is usually the most boring one. He has the most boring design, and what even is his personality? But they actually did something cool with him here. In Tangerino Grill, after you satisfy the toads, you still have to serve the VIP. He's also been riding in the train, and he's really picky with how he wants his steak done. So you try your best to prepare the best steak ever. Make sure you beat your meat enough, season it, cook it, and flavor it, all at the right time to make it perfect, so he's fully satisfied. And one level later, it turns out this VIP was Larry, and he's just hijacked your train while in the DDD pose. And then he constantly is talking about food and making food puns when you get to him. I mean, he's still a very one-note character like the rest, but see what having just a little more for him to do outside his boss can do? The reveal that he was the VIP was genuinely great. I didn't even guess it was him until he appeared. I can't believe this got me to like Larry of all Koopalings. Larry! Lemmy is next, and he's the best along with Larry. He's the main event at a circus as the greatest and most humble illusionist in the world. He does some disappearing acts before he makes himself disappear, which makes the circus leaders panic as that wasn't scheduled, so they have to improvise, and then have you perform to save the show. I'm glad they did something cool with Lemmy, he's my favorite. And lastly, Roy. He's actually not guarding the paint star, but instead he's in Bowser's castle. There's not much to Roy, but he does try to use your own paint against you. There's not much else to really say. The Koopalings are more interesting than they tend to be in New Super Mario Bros. Simply because they actually talk, but that's a low bar. I can't speak to their portrayals in the Mario and Luigi games they're in, but I suppose this is the best versions of them I've experienced. But again, they're hit or miss. Some are fun, some are boring, and they didn't even try to do anything with Wendy. And they still come with the problem of not having interesting new boss characters. And they don't interact much outside their boss fights, so there's not much anticipation to fight them. Paper Mario has always been very well written, being able to tell serious stories while still being hilarious and unserious at the same time, without the tone feeling inconsistent. Sticker Star threw out the seriousness, focusing entirely on humor, but still fumbled in that regard with repetitive paper jokes. There were funny moments, but nothing that matched the previous games, so the sacrifice of the serious story wasn't worth it. Color Splash largely matches the tone of Sticker Star. There are some serious moments, but they are few and nothing to the degree of the first three games. It primarily focuses on being funny and cramming in jokes everywhere, but it actually works this time, because the writing is far and above superior to Sticker Star. The jokes actually land, and they don't just repeat the same paper is the punchline jokes all the time. And the paper jokes are actually funny because they rely on everything being made of paper. There are some genuinely funny moments in this game. Sometimes the writing can feel like it's on the same level as the Thousand Year Door, or Super, and sometimes it goes into territories that they didn't even touch. This game can get very spicy with its jokes. There are straight up political jokes. Like there's a Watergate joke and even a gun control joke. Like seriously. Certainly not something you'd expect from the sequel to Sticker Star. There is one disappointing aspect that Sticker Star actually did better though. The descriptions of the things. In Sticker Star, each thing you added to the museum had a description that, while it didn't tell you what it did, was pretty funny. The thing descriptions had the best writing in the game. They were all toads trying to describe what the thing was, and they often had good paper jokes, unlike the rest of the game. So it's sad to see them have a bunch of boring and basic descriptions here, and they still don't tell you what they do in battle. But the rest of the writing makes up for it, I suppose. The humor writing in this game is spot on, but outside that, it is still lacking. It's better than Sticker Star in pretty much all aspects, but it still fails to deliver a compelling narrative and even characters outside of Huey. The writing was enough to keep me interested in playing through the game, but not really to see where the story goes because that's completely predictable and not very compelling, but to see more funny interactions and absurd scenarios. When it comes to well-written jokes and out-there set pieces, that's when the writing excels. Not when it comes to getting me to care about saving Peach or the big paint stars. There are small pockets of compelling side plots like the friend group toads waiting for Piper to return, or some of the rescue toads like this small one who wants to join but can't because he's too small, so you help him get bigger and he's able to join. It's all very simple stuff, but it works. It's just there's not quite enough of it, and practically none of it is within the main story. Of course, the biggest exceptions are the paths to the purple and orange big paint stars, where you join a pirate crew and help the passengers of this train. These are the kinds of things I want to see more of. The writing, when it's used to further a side plot like these, helps me feel compelled to help them out. But most of the game isn't like that. Overall, the story of this game is still lackluster. It improves from Sticker Star, but still doesn't reach the first 3 games. Everything this game does better than Sticker Star is still not up to snuff compared to the first 3 games. Perhaps the humor writing is better than 64 or on par with Thousand Year Door and Super, but I wouldn't say it surpasses them. There are still numerous moments from Thousand Year Door and Super that stand out more than anything in this game, even with how funny it can get. And those games excelled much more at telling stories. They had drama and emotion. You're not going to get anything as sad as Loveby turning into a pure heart, or as happy as Jolene reuniting with Prince Mush, or as heartwarming as Twink interacting with the revered star spirits. You won't have such a bittersweet feeling after saving the world and having to say goodbye to all your companions you've spent the whole game with. You won't miss this world or its inhabitants, not like you do with the first 3 games. You'll laugh a lot, and you will feel for some of the characters, but nothing like what you'll feel in those first 3 games. And that's why, even though it's a huge improvement over Sticker Star, it still doesn't match up to the first 3. It's still disappointing. But there's one more aspect of the story I want to talk about. I'm going to discuss something I don't usually talk about. Themes, in a narrative sense. Themes are what a story is about, not in the literal sense of what happens in the story, but what the story is trying to convey to the audience through the events of the story. Stories aren't just about the literal text, but also what we can draw from that text when we dive deeper. Without a theme, it can make a story feel very shallow. There's nothing wrong with simple, fun stories that aren't trying to say much, but themes can greatly enrich a story if done well. Of course, if a theme is done poorly, it can very much detract from the story. The Paper Mario series, being generally story-driven, have a variety of themes such as selflessness, family, loss, and love. And those first 3 games have strong themes that enhance those stories. Of course, this is ignoring Sticker Star, which is a prime example of how a lack of themes can detract from a story. If we look at the story of Sticker Star beyond the literal events of the game, what themes can we really draw from it? What is the game trying to tell us? What is the message? What does Bowser splitting the sticker comet and using the royal sticker to gain power represent? Well, okay. It is possible to extrapolate some semblance of a theme from Sticker Star, but you have to really stretch and fill in the massive gaps to find it. And it is just the bones of what Sticker's theme was, simply just fighting against selfishness. Bowser steals/destroys a wish-granting object to gain its power all to himself, denying others of that gift. But in Sticker Star, they just leave it at that and do not elaborate or say anything else about it. With as little story as that game has, there's no room at all for a theme to really develop. The bosses would have been an area to expand on that had they been using the power of the royal stickers to feed their selfish desires at the expense of others. But they haven't been shown to be harming anyone besides the blooper, and their motivations aren't elaborated on. Bowser also doesn't do anything outside the intro, so he doesn't expand on the theme, and this results in Sticker Star just feeling completely empty thematically. Now, why am I talking about this? Because of all the Paper Mario games, I find Color Splash to be the most interesting one to talk about themes with, for a few reasons. Now, what themes can we draw from Color Splash? The literal events are Bowser accidentally covering himself in black paint, which then possesses him. Then he has the Shy Guy suck the paint out of the world so he can use it to create more black paint to cover the world in it. There's a much clearer theme we can draw from this. The different colors of paint represent the things that make people in the world different and unique. That difference, that uniqueness, is special and beautiful. The black paint represents conformity. It's brought about by destroying that uniqueness. The black paint's creation requires the destruction of the other colors. The theme of this game is a rejection of conformity and embracing and celebrating what makes us different and unique. The goal of the antagonists is to cover the world in black paint, making everything the same. This is achieved by the Shy Guy sucking the color out of the world and the people, and what makes everything unique and beautiful being drained away, soon to be replaced with entirely the same shade of black paint. It's the erasure of the individual. The erasure of what makes us who we are. When the world is full of different colors, different people, it's absolutely beautiful. But when that's taken away, when individuals can't be who they really are, we're left with just the same depressing shade everywhere. That beauty that once was, gone. Individuals forced to be what they aren't, just to conform. The Shy Guys suck the paint from people, which erases their individuality, and the black paint covers them up to replace it with the ideal vision of the conformist. Throughout the game, it's shown that the Toads do embrace their individuality in small and simple ways. The things that make them unique are celebrated and not scorned. From sharing their passions to even playing and covering themselves with the very paint that makes them all unique in the first place. But Bowser's minions are often shown to be unsatisfied in their positions and roles. There's a couple examples I want to hone in on. Probably the most overt example of the theme is in Cherry Lake, where you come across a Shy Guy who's being pressured into joining with a stack of Shy Guys. They belittle him for not being part of the stack, make him feel like he has a problem for not joining them. In other words, they want him to conform. But the single Shy Guy doesn't want to conform. He wants to be his own person. He wants to keep his own individuality and not be another cog in the machine. He won't let others dictate how he will live his life. Like, they just practically spell out the theme here. But on the opposite side of the spectrum, there's this Shy Guy on the train. Here, there are a bunch of Bowser's minions who you can talk to, who are all in some way frustrated with the way things are, whether it's pollution or how they do all the work while Larry just sits back and gets a fancy dinner. But this one Shy Guy will ask you to sit with him, and he just vents his frustrations with him being another minion, about how he and the rest of them are just ordered to attack the train works with no notice and seemingly no reason. They've created all the hardships Mario endures and aren't so much as thanked for it. He laments that one day he will be forced to fight Mario, and it'll just be bad guy versus good guy. He wishes he could escape from all this, wishing he could go to some faraway place. But he can't. He's part of Bowser's army. That's his place in the world. And because of this, he might as well give up on his dreams. He was forced to conform. He can't be what he really wants to be. Even though the black paint wasn't explicitly involved in this example, it still shows the tragedy of conformity at work, forcing people into their designated roles that they have no choice but to fit into even if they don't want to. To be a cog in the machine, one big machine that suppresses freedom and individuality. Later in the game, you get into another seemingly normal battle with another of the same Shy Guys you constantly fight, but when you defeat him, he reveals he's the same Shy Guy you talked to on that train. His prediction that he would meet Mario again, but his enemies came to be. Unlike the Shy Guy who rejected joining the stack, this one was unable to break free from the conformity. He fulfilled his purpose as another cog in the machine. This theme can apply to many things in the real world. Paint can be allegorical to practically anything that makes a person stand out. But one reading I rather like and want to focus on is queerness. It's easy to take this in a very queer direction, given it's all about bringing together all the colors to create a literal rainbow to help you stop the black paint. And as a queer individual, I resonate with this reading of it, and that's how I choose to interpret it. Queer people have been historically, and unfortunately still are often, forced to hide our true selves, to appear to not be queer, to conform. We're told we need to look a certain way, act a certain way, based on arbitrary ideas of gender roles and expectations. How you are born is how you shall stay forever. No diverging from what we say you should be. No self-expression, no free love. Follow the path we've chosen for you. We must fit in these boxes. We must conform. It's why pride is a thing. To celebrate our queerness, the thing that makes us unique, in the face of those who would force us to conform. And this all doesn't just apply to queerness. It can also apply to neurodivergence, disability, beliefs, culture, race, etc. It's just the queer angle is what resonates more for me. Well, also neurodivergence. It also doesn't need to just be aspects that are intrinsic to who we are. It could be our interests, our tastes, our little quirks, our hyperfixations, or it could just simply be clothing. One thing I hated about this private school I went to was having to adhere to a dress code. It wasn't a strict uniform, but you had to wear boring white shirts with brown pants. The shirt also had to have a collar and be tucked in, which I always hated the look and feel of. The girls, of course, weren't allowed to wear pants. They had to be in a dress or skirt. The same color scheme, too. I was never comfortable wearing this. I didn't like how I looked wearing it, and everyone dressed the same. I couldn't wear what I wanted to wear. I couldn't express myself the way I wanted to express myself. I was able to get away with wearing a sweater over it, which I found some comfort in. I even wore it when it was hotter. But that also had to be brown, and it couldn't be a hoodie. But the worst part about this school was that the boys weren't allowed to have long hair. Contrary to my YouTube avatar, I'm not bald. I have quite long hair. I like having long hair, and always hated getting haircuts. Making me wear an uncomfortable uniform that I can just take off when I got home was one thing. But hair takes time to grow back. I like my long hair. It's a part of who I am, how I present myself. But I couldn't have that while at this school. I couldn't be my true self. I had to conform. Also, I hadn't realized I was queer back then, but I'm pretty sure that wouldn't have been accepted there for what are probably obvious reasons. As I said, I do resonate with this theme of rejecting conformity and embracing uniqueness. I think I resonate with it more than the previous games. Thematically, this game speaks to me more. Not that the others don't. They do, but in different ways. And they're not quite as personal as this one. Now, I spent all this time building up the idea of this theme and how it is a beautiful message, but nothing is perfect. And unfortunately, it's pretty far from perfect. It's time to tear it down because there's a pretty big issue that almost nullifies everything I just said. And it's one word: toads. The word toad will make any old school Paper Mario fan cringe, mainly because of Sticker Star stripping away the unique designs they previously had, and having every single toad with only a couple exceptions being the generic toad design, with only different colors to differentiate them. This is something that carried over to other games such as Paper Jam and even Color Splash. Now I will give credit to Color Splash because it does have some unique designs for the toads. But those unique designs are still too few and far between, and they don't come with names. While yes, you do have a conductor toad, hotel worker toads, and of course the rescue toads, the vast majority of toads you will encounter are the basic toad design with only the color to differentiate them. There are some more unique toads, but they are all additive to the basic design, like a hat or glasses, rather than being fully unique designs. And while this is better than Sticker Star, I find it much more disappointing because it completely goes against the theme I was talking about. The game sets up this beautiful theme of rejecting conformity and embracing uniqueness, but what uniqueness is it celebrating? What is unique about all these toads? This game has the bare minimum of unique designs, yet we're supposed to act like this makes them unique? That this is worth celebrating? It's almost comical how much the toads undercut the theme. They single-handedly ruin it. This game about rejecting conformity was the victim of conformity. The toads had to conform to the idealized design they've been given. The uniqueness they've previously displayed has been scrubbed away. It's frustrating looking at this game telling me to celebrate uniqueness with nameless characters that all look the same. The first two games weren't perfect with the designs for NPCs. Most of the time they'd all be the same design, and for other species like Koopas they would be their generic designs. But there still were a variety of toad designs, and NPCs that are actual characters rather than generic NPCs always had unique designs. Here it's inconsistent. There are toads that are supposed to be actual characters, but even they rarely get designs. Some of them get unique designs, but they are mostly just additive to the normal toad design. The chef has a chef hat, but that's it. The museum owner just has glasses. The Mustard Cafe chef only has sunglasses. Even the rescue squad chief only has a scarf and sunglasses, unlike the other members who have a uniform, though I'll get to those guys in a bit. Then there's the 2 pirate captains, who both only have a cutlass and pirate hat. They are different from each other, but it's still just on top of the default design. What's funny is when the red pirate captain sees the yellow one and he recognizes that he's the legendary captain he's been talking about, he starts listing off recognizable characteristics of the captain, like how he has yellow spots and a yellow vest. Yeah, because that doesn't describe a significant amount of toads in the game. Oh hey, it's the legendary captain right here. He just took his hat off. Then there's the rock paper wizard. You face off against one of these guys at each Roshambo temple. I'll give credit to the design. It's pretty good, but it is just adding to the normal toad design. They couldn't have given him a different shirt or pants. Anyways, when you beat the final rock paper wizard, it's revealed that there are actually 8 of them instead of 1, which I actually just assumed they were all different in the first place. But it's funny because this highlights the problem even further. They all look the same. In a game full of unique designs for toads, this could have been a funny joke where you assume they're all the same character, but no, they were actually all different this whole time. This doesn't work here because most toads in the game don't have different designs, so when you see another toad, you wouldn't think it's a toad you already met. Some of the concept art showed some more unique designs for toads. Not a lot, but still, this is what I want. Why couldn't we have this? They made this pirate toad design, and then decided to remove the pirate coat? Why? This one also looked to have darker skin, and they also cut that. And look at this early design for the rock paper wizard. That would have been cool, wouldn't it? Though I still do love the giant hand hat. But there's also the toads who are actual characters that don't even get an accessory, let alone an outfit. None of Piper's friends have a unique design. There's just one of each color, and that's it. There's the professor who you interact with a few times, but he's just a normal yellow toad. And then there's the foreman, and this is the most egregious example. I already went over his short but compelling arc of him wanting to retire, but his last job is on a train that is also one trip away from being retired, and in the end they both end up continuing. But the foreman is just a green toad, no other features. Not only that, but all of his workers are also green toads. He's not even distinguished from them at all. He doesn't look older than them, so it's odd how he's treated that way. There's also the toad that Peach brings with her, who not just doesn't have a unique design, but is the default red-spotted blue vest toad. And I find him to particularly be a missed opportunity, because he could be used to further the theme. What if the toads of Prism Island were much more expressive and individualized than those of the Mushroom Kingdom? This toad is just a normal toad, and he gets enamored by the ways the Prism Island toads express themselves, and that inspires him to start expressing himself more. So as the game goes on, he takes on some unique appearance. It really takes away from the story when it's about characters that don't have designs. How are you supposed to care for these characters when they don't have a design? Having unique and memorable characters was such a strong aspect of those first 3 games, and they knew it. With the scene in Thousand Year Door, where the crystal stars fly off to all the characters you met along the way, have nearly as much impact if they all looked the same. Color Splash has something similar. After you get each big paint star, a bunch of toads will dance in celebration in Port Prisma. And well, just look at it. These will have the toads you met during the chapter show up, but like, you meet so few unique toads, and by unique I'm including toads who are just different colors, so the rest of them are just the default red spots and blue vests. The only reason you'd be able to recognize the individual toads is because they're the only ones that aren't the default ones. The most you'll get is a handful of different toads. The blue and orange stars are the ones with the most, but the others barely have any. The one for the yellow paint star has 1 yellow toad, and that's it. In that entire chapter, you only meet 1 non-default toad. Oh, and Princess is here too, I guess. But you see the problem? There's a significant percentage of toads that I've hardly mentioned up to now. The Toad Rescue Squad. The Toad Rescue Squad appears all throughout the game. They are the most significant NPCs you'll encounter, as they will help you out after you help them, of course. They do have a unique design, which isn't just additive to the base design, well, except the chief, who is a normal toad with a scarf and sunglasses. But even though the rest have a unique design, they still have the same issue that the normal toads do. There are 5 squads. Each one has 1 captain and a varying number of cadets. The captains and cadets do have a slightly different design from each other, but all the cadets share the same design, and each squad is only differentiated by color, like the normal toads. I find it odd that they match the colors of the paint stars, but there's 1 less of them. There's no orange rescue squad. I thought that was weird, until I realized it's because they aren't matching the colors of the paint stars, they're just all the colors normal toads have, and there are no orange toads. Toads can now only come in 5 colors. They can't even add in orange, so there's a type of toad for each color that makes a Prism Island. Maybe it's a gray Jinjo situation. The Toad Rescue Squad is a questionable addition to this story when you take the theming into account. Your biggest ally in the fight against conformity is uniformed. Now, I don't have a problem with this inherently. Uniforms have a purpose, and it makes sense that a coalition such as the Rescue Squad would have a uniform to signify its members, and who belongs to what squad. But having a uniform doesn't have to come at the cost of individuality. Imagine if each member had something unique about them on top of their uniform. Stuff like hair or glasses or other accessories. How about different ages or genders? Different heights or body types? Maybe different mannerisms or personality traits. Something to make them unique. And I actually thought of an example of another game that had something similar to the Rescue Squad and did it so much better. But I'm going to pass the mic to an expert on the game in question to go over it.
I'm grateful to have this opportunity to elaborate on Red's points regarding Color Splash's Toad Rescue Squad. Let's dive right in. It's not difficult to imagine an alternate version of Color Splash where these toads had individual design quirks and mannerisms. But why imagine when we can look at a title that utilizes this exact approach for its main cast? The Wonderful 101, created by Hideki Kamiya and Platinum Games, exemplifies a pristine model of what the Toad Rescue Squad could have been. The player partakes in a story involving Earth's elite defense force, the Wonderful 100, as they fight to protect the planet from alien invaders. A cast of unique characters, each with their own color that they identify with. Wonder Red is the main protagonist, a Clark Kent-like figure who lives a double life of a schoolteacher and a superhero. It's very standard material, but that's not telling the whole story yet. Over the course of the plot, you learn a lot about him as an individual person. He has a given name, Will Wedgwood. He has friends separate from his colleagues. He has different relationships and interactions with each member of the cast. He has a dark past involving the witnessing of his father's death, and has a chip on his shoulder because of it. He can be stern, formal, romantic, awkward, and passive. Wonder Red is bound by the red-colored protagonist aesthetic, but he is a fully fleshed out character. With exception to flashbacks involving his father, Red's characterization is revealed passively when relevant to the situations the characters find themselves in. In other words, it's not deep or portrayed up front, but the detail helps make him likable. Players will understand who he is, what motivates him, and what his strengths and weaknesses are. Like the Toad Rescue Squad, he shares a similar uniform with his colleagues. They are a team after all. But look at the substantial difference that individuality makes to the Wonderful 100 by comparison. Generally, the same level of detail and characterization given to Wonder Red is granted to the other main characters in the story, especially Elliot Hooker, Jean-Sebastian Renault, Mariana Cretzulesco, Vorkin OG, Immorta OG, and Lawrence Nelson. I won't describe the cast's detailings as I feel the synopsis for Wonder Red paints the picture, but you can take my word for it that the writers gave these characters so much to enjoy individually, and none of it takes away from the theme of teamwork or the image of all 100 members together. The gameplay emphasizes this on its own, as you can see. Platinum Games takes individualization a step further with the character profiles unlocked. And let's be clear, the developers didn't need to make these as detailed as they were to warrant satisfaction. Few are scratching their heads wondering the precise measurement of leadership skills exhibited by Wonder Pink or Wonder White's favorite hobby during his downtime. Still, Color Splash doesn't show any level of detail for the Toad Rescue Squad, and it cannot rely on the appeal of the team's identity alone to make them truly stand out. We can aspire to write characters banded together like the Wonderful 101, and show extra care and attention to detail for those who want to learn even more about the characters they like. Speaking of things people like, there's a Wonderful 100 agent for just about every kind of character gimmick you could imagine. Unlike the rival characters team, Prince Vorkin, whose team all looks the same. Each member of the Wonderful 100 has a completely unique design, name, and tons of flavor text detailing their personality. These supplemental characters bring such life to the formations, seeing tens of characters on screen at once, but each being an individual at the end of the day. Once more, I have to consider the lost potential of the Toad Rescue Squad here. In summary, The Wonderful 101 provides a more adequate expression of its cast in comparison to the team of Toads found in Color Splash, which is not to position the Unite action title as superior to the Mario Adventure game, but it is to highlight what could have been achieved with the Toad Rescue Squad. Enthusiasts of Paper Mario are likely aware of the inexplicable restrictions placed on the uniqueness of its characters and setting, and I think most would agree that even within these limitations, we can look towards titles like The Wonderful 101 to make the most of our given premises. Thank you, Red. Back to you.
Thank you, IKG Productions. You can see how despite being uniformed, the Wonderful 100 manages to have each member be unique. This is what I want out of the Rescue Squad. But no, they all look the same. They all conform to their designated look, with only a couple slight exceptions. Although for one of them it's this small Toad. He was shrunken by Kamek along with the rest of the area. He really wants to join the Rescue Squad, and he does try to join, but is rejected because he's small. You need to find a way to make him bigger so he'll be accepted. In other words, you have to make him conform. Now, he was a normal-sized Toad who was shrunken down, but what if he was accepted even as a small Toad? Anyone, no matter their shape or size, can fight against conformity. But how it is, to fight conformity, you have to conform. Now this guy does retain some individuality even after he's restored to normal size, as he isn't given the standard uniform, instead a scarf as he's a new recruit, but it is just a scarf on top of the normal Toad design. This Toad was a missed opportunity. Overall, the Rescue Squad has the same problems as the regular Toads, but here they set up something that could potentially add to the theme and they actively reject it. But that isn't the worst example. The most tragic part of the Rescue Squad is when the red team is assembled. All 50 of them in a line for the circus, and all of them, every single one of them, has a unique bit of dialogue. It is fun to just talk to each of them for something different each time, until you get to this one. This one wanted to be part of the blue Rescue Squad, but because he's a red Toad, he can't. He must be part of the red squad. Because of the way he was born, he can't express himself the way he wants to. He can't be what he wants to be. He must conform. This goes so far against the theme of rejecting conformity that I don't know what to think. It simultaneously feels so thoughtless, and it seriously puts into question if any of this stuff was even intentional. That no, they didn't have a theme in mind when writing the story, and it just accidentally formed in spite of all it. But also, the fact that it so blatantly goes against it makes it feel extremely self-aware. Like they did have this theme in mind, but were unable to realize it under the looming restrictions Nintendo placed upon them. So this is them venting about it. Is Color Splash vent art? There are a few times where the game does seem self-aware about generic Toads. Sticker Star wasn't like that. It feels like they were actually trying, but couldn't go any farther. Why does it really matter that they don't have unique designs? I mean, it's just a silly game about paint that isn't supposed to be taken as anything else. Even putting aside the theme, there's still an issue. There's a severe lack of diversity. Diversity is important for making a world feel real, to make the characters feel like actual people rather than just NPCs in a video game. The real world is a diverse place, full of different kinds of people. People of different races, genders, sexuality, ages, heights, body types. And this game represents none of that. We still don't have any female Toads at all. Not a single Toad in this game is female. Actually, just in general, the only women in this game are Peach, Birdo, and Wendy, and that's it. Also Princess, if you would even count her. Also, there's no diversity in body type. Though to be fair, that was pretty rare in the first two games, and plus-sized body types were often the butt of jokes. There's no diversity in ages. We used to have child Toads and old Toads. Not anymore. No one has any hair at all. The Toads could have hair and facial hair before, but there's nothing like that in this game. And obviously, if they weren't going to have all that, there wasn't going to be any diversity with sexualities. I guess the different colors of Toads could technically be their races, though as I pointed out before, there's concept art of a darker skinned Toad, so it was an idea at one point that was rejected. As much as some people want everything to be homogeneous, or in other words, want conformity, there are all kinds of different people that exist. So when a game doesn't have any diversity in its NPCs, it doesn't feel real. I've most likely just thought way too deeply about a game that probably doesn't deserve to be looked at like this. But I don't think any piece of art is below being analyzed in such a way. And it really doesn't matter if the theme is actually there or not, because the death of the author is real. art isn't strictly about what the author wants to tell you, but also how we interpret it, and what we take away from it. Even if something wasn't intended by the author, it doesn't make it an invalid reading of it. So I still continue to read it this way, even with the massive flaws. Those flaws are very frustrating, but I still love reading it as a rejection of conformity and the celebration of uniqueness. If I were to make a video about how I would improve Color Splash like I did with Super and Sticker Star, which I'm not going to do, just so we're clear, I'd mostly focus on seeing this theme reach its full potential. At the end of the day, it simply is just bad character design. The design of a character is one of the most important parts of them. Designs are there to make characters recognizable so you can distinguish them from everyone else. You can't distinguish these toads from each other. Designs are there to add to the characteristics of a character. They help inform us what the character is like. Just looking at some characters can give us a lot of information of what that character is like. What does the design of the professor tell us about him? How are we supposed to connect with the characters that look like everyone else? All of this also applies to the other species as well. Much like Sticker Star, there aren't any new characters in this game that aren't just members of whatever species there are. And unlike the toads who do have some unique variation to their designs, the other species don't. And even with those two Shy Guy examples I pointed out as good examples of the theme, they're just the typical Shy Guy design. But there's not much else to bring up with them that doesn't also apply to toads. Well, I think it's time to officially move on to visuals. I think I've effectively conveyed the problem with the character designs in the game by talking about toads. So let's talk about paper. Color Splash doubles down on the paper aesthetic that Sticker Star started. Despite being called Paper Mario, paper was never that important to the series. Thousand Year Door did have a good amount of paper in it, but 64 and Super hardly had any. Sticker Star made it so everything looked like it was made of paper or cardboard. While the 3DS was limited in how it could present this style, it still did a fairly convincing job of it. Everything did look like paper and cardboard. Color Splash is the same art style, but without the limitations. I was mixed on the full paper art style. I'm not inherently opposed to it, though I still prefer Thousand Year Door's art style. But I certainly can't deny that Color Splash is pretty damn beautiful. It was already fairly convincingly done in Sticker Star, but now it's even more so. Now without the limitations, they can have the paper more convincingly move like paper. This is best shown whenever wind is involved. The way characters and objects crease and fold is also done better. Like just comparing when Decalburg got burritoed to when Ruddy Road gets folded up. Sticker Star did have some nice looking water, but aside from some parts like waterfalls or waterspouts, it didn't really look like paper. But yeah, that is a paper ocean there. This game has fully shown a world made of paper in a very convincing manner. Now, it still doesn't quite do as creative stuff as Thousand Year Door did with bosses like Hooktail or Magnus von Grapple. Like, they have a Dragodon, a big dragon creature, and it's also a flat piece of paper, while Thousand Year Door did this with Hooktail. It's strange how they go all in on making everything paper, but don't take the most creative uses of it from Thousand Year Door. It still doesn't even have the paper transition and effects like pages ripping or turning or blowing away. But for what it did it very well. One kind of controversial aspect of the paper aesthetic that started in this game are the white outlines. This is quite a heated topic apparently, and I am pretty neutral towards it. Like, I really don't have any strong feelings about it. I could take it or leave it. One thing people complain about is that the characters already have an outline, so this just adds another outline. I guess I can get that, but it's trying to show they are drawn on pieces of paper that are cut out, but not perfectly so. If you were to draw a character and cut them out, you wouldn't typically use the blank parts of the paper as the outline. Although they could have made the cutout rougher to really sell that idea. As it is, the white outline perfectly matches the shape of the characters. It could have been a cute idea that how smooth or rough the cutout is depends on the character. Like Mario and Peach would have really smooth cutouts, but characters like Morton would have a really rough cutout, or characters like Iggy and Lemmy would have a more crazy cutout. They could have gone in some pretty creative directions with the cutout idea to complement the characters. But as it is, it's really just a second outline. There was a piece of concept art from Mario where he had rougher edges, which I think would have looked even better had they gone in that direction. And actually, this concept art in general just looks amazing with how the cutout is used to emphasize the movement, along with how the paint goes along with it. The finished game kinda does this, but it's much more subtle and hard to see without slowing it down. I think they should have gone all in this direction. It would have looked incredible and pretty distinct. Especially with how much paint is a central part of the game, making the characters actually look painted like this would have fit perfectly. If Paper Mario wants to go all in on looking like paper, then I think it should go all the way in and look like this. Alright, let's talk about theming, level theming that is. Sticker Star was very boring with theming, just taking the basic generic Mario themes you'd expect to see. Color Splash, while still not the most creative Mario game with level themes, is still much better than Sticker Star. Prism Island is divided into 6 sections. Each section is associated with a specific color, and so that color is the dominant color in those areas. The colors can correlate to some of the generic themes: orange is desert, blue is water, red is lava, but while those themes exist, they do more interesting stuff with them. For one, the theming of a color isn't just one thing. Red isn't just lava, but also contains Ruddy Road, which is a fairly straightforward grassy area, but with a red road that's on a cliffside overlooking the lake. And then there's Cherry Lake itself, which is mostly on docks with water wheels, and even the green grass is now yellow. Like, sure, this isn't all that out there in terms of theming, but the change is enough to keep it fresh. Like, imagine if in any new Super Mario Bros. Game, if the aesthetic of the world could vary like this level to level. Now, the rest of the red region isn't too interesting. The Crimson Tower is a fairly standard castle, and there's 2 kinda generic volcano levels. Red Pepper Volcano has these rock formations shaped like bottles that spew lava out of them, which is a cool detail, but that's about it. The blue region has a beach level, but it also has a haunted hotel, and a military base. The yellow region is mostly mountainous areas, with one sand-filled cave and a coliseum. The mountain is one of the standard new Super Mario Bros. Themes, but yellow being the primary color helps it feel more unique. Orange is a desert, but not the Sahara Desert-inspired ones of typical Mario games, but more of a Rocky American-style desert. It's also mostly focused on the train and its stops, so we get a train yard and a restaurant. There's also a dig site and temple ruins, so this is much more diverse than any desert world Mario has had. Green is a fairly standard forest area, but at least the atmosphere of each level is different, which does help a lot. Chapter 3 of Sticker Star having that many levels, all with the same atmosphere, made it drag on even more. At least here, you have a forest during the day that's dark because of the trees, and the sun peeks through the gaps in the leaves. One that leads out to a more sunny area, and one that's dark and misty. This does really help the basic theme feel different enough. Time of day can really do a lot to diversify a location, even if it's the same theme. Being at a different time of day does a lot to make it feel different. And then there's the purple region, which, aside from having this beautiful looking park, is all about these islands, which, aside from the purple palette making them feel distinct, has this other dimension that looks amazing. As you can see, this game is much more interesting with the level themes than Sticker Star. And even when it does fall on familiar tropes, it does more with them than just the tropes. There's also the point that you don't just go through one color at a time, you go back and forth, so you'll be getting a change in scenery often. You won't be stuck in a desert for a few hours at a time. Now for the soundtrack. The music of Color Splash takes after Sticker Star more so than the previous games with its direction, though offers more diversity in genres than the mostly jazzy direction of Sticker Star. There's still plenty of jazz though. And like Sticker Star, it's much more in line with modern Mario soundtracks than what the first 3 games were going for. While closer to Sticker Star style, Color Splash doesn't make the same mistakes that game's soundtrack made. Sticker Star did have good music, but there wasn't much that the game offered that the music could grasp onto. With more varied locations, we get more varied music that is trying to evoke a feeling greater than just desert, grass, snow. Each level has its own track to go with it, rather than just the theme itself having a single track for multiple levels. So even if Ruddy Road is essentially a normal grassland level, it's the only one with this track, which makes it more unique. This isn't the grass theme, it's the Ruddy Road theme. This isn't the beach theme, it's the Blue Bay Beach theme. The music has more to attach itself to. You now associate the music with the level it's a part of, like how you associate the Glitzville music with that location. Because the music is matched to specific levels, it becomes part of the identity of the level rather than the identity of the world theme. It sticks out more. Each level is distinct from one another. It's not like New Super Mario Bros. Or Sticker Star, where each level in a theme is stuck using the same visuals and music with few exceptions. Each level is able to be its own thing and build its own tone and atmosphere, and the music is part of it. World 3 and Sticker Star had the strongest atmosphere in that game because it was more than just the typical New Super Mario Bros. Forest. It was a poison-filled, gloomy forest. And the music reflected that atmosphere rather well, but the problem was that there were 12 levels with that same atmosphere and music, with only a couple exceptions. So each level blended in with each other. But in Color Splash we have Plum Park, which has a similar atmosphere given it also has polluted water. But because it's the only level with that atmosphere, it's the only one with this music. So this music is the Plum Park theme, rather than the World 3 theme. Color Splash has a much bigger soundtrack with a lot more variety because of this, which is great. Now as for the music itself, it is rather good, but it isn't as memorable to me. It's probably just because I haven't listened to it as much as the previous game's soundtracks, because whenever I do listen to it, it is pretty good. But similarly to Sticker Star, I just prefer Thousand Year Door and Super soundtracks. It is just a preference, I can't help it. I do enjoy it while playing, and anytime I listen to it outside the game, it is good. There are some tracks that did stand out to me. I do quite like Dark Blue Inn's music. I'm always a sucker for haunted atmospheres like this. Toad Train Works is also pretty good. They also brought back Kamek's theme from Sticker Star, and it's still great. And that beautiful Mario 3 King remix, and it's nice hearing it in higher quality. Oh, and there's a remix of the Mario 2 Overworld theme, which is one of my favorite classic Mario tracks. But my favorite tracks are the islands you go to on the path to the Purple Star. Lighthouse Island. And Fortune Island. I love the piratey feel of it. Color Splash does have quite a good soundtrack, even if it isn't my preference. I can absolutely understand people holding it up as their favorite. Sticker Star did have good music, but Color Splash easily outdoes it. Well, So far, while there are some issues, this has been significantly better than Sticker Star. But the gameplay is where Sticker Star really fumbled. The trailers for Color Splash showed a game that is very similar to Sticker Star. A better story and presentation won't help much if the gameplay is just as bad. Indeed, the game plays just like Sticker Star. Your moveset is identical with only one upgrade. In the first two games, you could only swing your hammer left or right. Sticker Star added up and down to that, which was convenient. In Color Splash, the range you can swing your hammer is a full 360 degrees. You have complete control over where you swing it, which is very nice. Now in standing still, it still defaults to left or right, so you have to actively be holding the direction you want while hitting the button to swing there. You can't move in that direction, let go, then attack there. That can be slightly awkward, but it's outweighed just by being able to swing in all directions. Alright, let's talk about the battle system. Sticker Star's battle system was completely awful in practically all aspects, and not just when compared to the Thousand Year Door. Even on its own, it's horrible. It regressed so much, removing most of the things that made Thousand Year Door's combat so good and replacing it with either nothing or something much worse. It was the worst part of a very bad game. So naturally, Color Splash uses the same combat system with very little improvements. This is the most baffling thing about this game. This game is still pretty flawed, but in basically all aspects it vastly improves on Sticker Star, except the battle system is almost untouched. Now there are changes, but they're mostly pretty small, and some of them are worse. There are a lot of things that make Sticker Star's battle system as bad as it is. I wasn't exaggerating when I said every facet of it was bad. But the main issue is it revolves entirely around consumables. You had to collect stickers, and they were all your actions in battle. If you wanted to jump on an enemy, you had to use a jump sticker, and when you did that, the sticker gets used up. That combined with the limited inventory, no experience points, unclear damage, being unable to target who you want, simplified action commands, lack of customization, the battle spinner, and, well, you get it. Basically everything was not only badly done, but all the bad elements are connected. Each bad thing isn't just bad on its own. The other problems make them worse than they would be individually. If you want a breakdown of every problem with Sticker Star's battle system, you can find it in my Sticker Star review. As Color Splash's battle system is so similar, I'll try to avoid going as in-depth on the parts that are the same. Sticker Star's battle system revolved around collecting stickers and using them in battle, but stickers aren't in this game, so instead you collect cards. It's mostly an aesthetic difference. When I said Sticker Star's battle system would be better if it was a card game, this isn't what I meant. Instead of having 3 sizes of stickers that you need to fit in small pages, cards come in one size and there's no inventory rearranging to fit them. You can now just hold 99 cards from the start and the number never changes. It's nice not having to worry about a small inventory and having to constantly throw out stickers to fit more in. You'll still have similar inventory issues, but it takes a lot longer for it to happen, and it in general isn't as bad. But there's one major drawback to this. Instead of having pages with many stickers there, all 99 of the cards are displayed in a single file line. This makes it annoying to scroll through, especially since you need to use the touchscreen to do it. So it doesn't always register your inputs right, and sometimes you can accidentally pick up a card when you didn't mean to. This really makes selecting cards in battle much more tedious than Sticker Star. It could also take a while to find a sticker you wanted to use, but at least there you had pages full of stickers. Here you have to scroll through all your cards just to look at what you have. There's an auto sort button which helps, although it always starts you at the far right of the line. So if you want something that's all the way on the left, you have to scroll all the way over. You don't have the annoying issues with medium stickers creating gaps where no stickers can be placed. But damn, this is tedious and might even be worse because of it. The main difference in how cards function in battle compared to stickers is that their strength is determined by how much they are painted. You'll get plenty of cards that are already painted, maybe too many, but you'll also get cards that you'll have to paint yourself. You have a supply of paint that has multiple functions, but in battle it's just to paint your cards. In a way, paint is similar to FP in that it's a renewable resource used in battle, but instead of using special moves with it, you power up your attacks. You can partially color a card, but most of the time you'll want to fully color it, as the more color it has, the stronger it is. Your paint supply is made up of the 3 primary colors, red, blue, and yellow, and depending on the card, depends on what color or colors you use. This doesn't really add much except an extra step to selecting cards, which makes battling even more tedious. In order to select an attack, you need to scroll through your inventory to find it, select the card by moving it here, then holding down on it to paint it, then confirming you're done, then flicking it up. It doesn't sound like much, but you need to do this for every single attack and it really builds up. Paint is also not much of a resource. It's only the strongest cards you'll be saving for bosses that take enough paint that can threaten your paint supply. It was only near the end of the game where I ever ran out of paint in battle. And as long as you have pre-painted cards, which you will have an abundance of, you don't have to worry about paint even against those bosses. You replenish your paint really easily out of battle, and you can upgrade your supply, and only after a few upgrades, you get to the point where you just don't have to worry about paint basically at all. But how do you upgrade your paint supply? Well, when you defeat enemies, they drop these hammer scraps, and when you pick up enough of them, they level up your supply. Wait, are they experience points? Yeah, in a way they added back experience points. The lack of experience in Sticker Star is a highly contested aspect of that game because without giving you a reason to fight enemies, they just become tedious to fight and you're just wasting your resources for nothing, which encourages you to avoid combat. So yeah, one of the main complaints people had with Sticker Star is addressed, which is great, right? Well, as I said, paint isn't much of a resource, and after only a few level ups does paint stop being an issue. So it kind of invalidates the whole system. Why bother fighting enemies to upgrade your paint supply when you are never running out of it anyways? I guess it still is a reason to fight enemies, but it's not a good reason, so it still encourages you to avoid combat. Running from battle is still the optimal way of dealing with enemies because it still deletes enemies. And the coin bonus you get at the end of levels for defeating enemies is a lot less than Sticker Star, so there's still no point in fighting enemies. One step forward, one step back, and we're still where we started. Though there is one change to running from battle. In Sticker Star, if you mashed the button, the screen would go dark, but running is completely random, and the screen darkening is only to show if the run is successful or not. Well, it's still up to luck if the run is successful, but they cut out the mashing to make the screen dark. You either run or don't, which I guess that's an improvement, but running being luck-based was the bigger issue here. It should have gone back to how Thousand Year Door handled it. The battle spinner is back, but it serves a completely different function. In Sticker Star, you paid money to spin a roulette to get a chance at gaining 2 or 3 attacks per turn. Here you still spend money to activate it, but instead you'll have a circle of cards spinning around and you have to try and stop it on the card you want to get. You apparently can spend more money to show the cards face up and slow it down, but somehow I didn't realize you could do that. Probably because this isn't very useful as the game showers you with cards that you're not ever really in a situation where you need to do this to get more cards. The only time I ever had to use it was on the final boss, for reasons that I'll go over much later. But that was it. I mean, I guess it's okay, but the one time I had to use it was very annoying, so it's hard for me to tell if this is a good inclusion or not. But if that's what this does now, how do you do more attacks in a turn? Well, at various points in the game, you get an extra card slot. This allows you to add one more attack during your turn. You'll be able to use 4 cards per turn by the end of the game, and there's no cost for it. You can just do it. You also don't need to play all of them, unlike in Sticker Star, where if you got triple on a battle spinner, you have to play 3, and then the next turn you have to play 2, even if you only want to use 1, which results in wasted stickers. Now, if you still manage to defeat the enemies before using all cards, you still lose the cards you didn't use, which is annoying, and you still can't choose who you want to target, so using multiple stickers is the only way to target enemies in the back. But overall, this is probably the best change to the battle system. It takes away a bit of tedium to be able to use more attacks freely, and makes battles go by faster. It doesn't fix the battle system, selecting cards is still tedious, but it helps. Now, one thing changed is the card lineup. A lot of the stickers from Sticker Star return as cards, usually functioning the same way, though some are different, like the Slap Hammer equivalent, the KO Hammer, now being able to hit multiple enemies. They are also tiered differently. Now, instead of having shiny, flashy, big shiny, and mega flash variants, you just have the normal version, big version, and huge version, though there are still worn out jumps and hammers. One of the biggest changes is the addition of multi-hit cards. You'll get worn out jump times 3, which will have you do 3 jump attacks with 1 card. Those can even go up to 5, but only the worn out versions. This is actually a really nice addition, and that on top of freely being able to play multiple cards. You can do a lot of attacks in 1 turn with these cards, and it's just nice because it allows you to just end the fight faster. The other big change is the addition of enemy cards. Some enemies in Sticker Star would drop unique stickers which basically let you do their attack. Color Splash massively expands on that concept. Defeating enemies can give you a card of that enemy, and if you use it, they will assist you in battle. Don't get too excited, they aren't partners. They're only for one battle, and you can't choose their attack. They'll stand in front of you so they'll be attacked before you, though they don't usually survive the enemy's turn. They also just don't work against bosses. They'll either run away or turn against you. It's a neat idea, but aside from some, like Koopas, having a good attack, they're not really that helpful. There's a lot of these guys, so maybe I just haven't used the right ones. But it's also inconsistent when you get them, as you have to get them from the enemies you fight. I guess the number of them is to make up for a lot of cut attacks from Sticker Star. There were quite a few cut stickers, which isn't really a problem, though I noticed a bit of a lack of screen nuke attacks. Though that might just be because the shells were replaced with Koopa and Buzzy Beetle cards. And with all the multi-hit cards, it might not have been necessary anyways. Some defensive cards work differently, like the tails. In Sticker Star, they would be a one-use sticker just like the rest. But here, as long as you don't take any damage, you keep the effect. This is really nice, and makes them much more useful, though it ironically comes with an issue in the rare instance you can't damage the enemy without it, because you'll still need to use a card on your next turn. Why can't we have a do-nothing command again? A do-nothing command would completely fix this issue. There's not a lot going on with the enemies beyond what Sticker Star's lineup was. There are new enemies. Shy Guys replaced Goombas as the default low-tier enemy, so Goombas are actually not that common. The most significant new type of enemies are the stacks. For them, they don't take the full damage of attack, but instead each attack, no matter how strong, will take away one of the stack. Occasionally, when you enter the map, the Shy Bandit will appear and try to go to a level and drain its color. You have to try to beat him to it to stop him. Most of the time he'll get there first and you'll have to fight him. I've never had him finish draining the color, so I'm not sure what happens. There's not much special about fighting him other than he makes you miss attacks, which is really annoying when it wastes cards. But he'll drop his card, which supposedly guarantees enemies drop their cards if they're killed by it. It doesn't seem to work on Bob-ombs though. The Shy Bandit can just be annoying. It doesn't get in the way too much, but most of the time I just want to get a move on. Probably the most significant thing that is worse than Sticker Star's battle system is enemy health and damage numbers. So in the first two games, after tattling an enemy, you see how much HP they have. Simple and helpful. Sticker Star removed tattling so it showed enemy health by default, but each enemy's health is pooled into one number, so it made figuring out how much health the individual enemies have harder. This led to wasting stickers by misjudging how much damage you need to deal to an enemy, whether you used a sticker that was too weak or wasted a strong sticker on an enemy that didn't have a lot of health. Somehow, Color Splash took that and did it worse, because it just erased all numbers. You can see your HP, but that's it. Enemy health is no longer displayed, and you do not get to see how much damage your cards are doing. Now, you can see how much health the enemies have. The more damage they take, the less color they have. This does allow you to see the health of the individual enemies again, which is nice, but this doesn't give you enough information. It's basically a percentage for how much health they have, but even less precise. An enemy with 10 HP would have the same percentage of health as an enemy with 50. When you encounter a new enemy, you have no idea how much health they have, so you have to guess what cards to use to see how effective they are. And because you can't see how much damage your cards do, the only way you'll ever be confident in what cards will do enough damage is to fight the same enemy enough times to get a feel for it. But that's only with the same attack. It's hard to compare the damage of different cards, and this isn't even accounting for the variable amount of damage cards can do depending on how much they're painted. How much does a hammer that's only half painted do? I don't know. The whole system is just vague. You'll only have a vague idea of how much health an enemy has, or how much damage you do, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but it is when you're working with a consumable-based battle system, where if you underestimate or overestimate how much is needed to defeat an enemy, you'll end up wasting a lot of cards. This takes away strategy. The whole appeal of turn-based combat is strategy to figure out what attacks to do and when to minimize damage taken and resources lost. How are you supposed to strategize when everything is so vague you have no idea what anything does? I mentioned in my Sticker Star review that the game doesn't want you to think about damage numbers, which is why the health of all enemies are pulled together, and the game gives you basically no information on the damage numbers for your stickers. And Color Splash doubles down on this by outright removing enemy health totals and damage numbers completely. It doesn't want you to strategize, it just wants you to pick the strongest cards. There's not much left to discuss with the battle system, but there's a few miscellaneous changes to go over quickly before wrapping this up. Status effects have been all but removed. There's even less than in Sticker Star. Crumpled is like the only one you will encounter. Dizzy exists, but only for one enemy and a boss. Everything else is relegated to the Roy boss fight, where status effects are his gimmick. Sleep isn't even in this game, and they actually made it more interesting in Sticker Star where you got healed every turn you're asleep, but now that's gone. Again, this contributes to the lack of strategy. The only strategy is to just use the strongest attacks. Can't prioritize targets, can't inflict status effects, can't even know how much damage you're doing, just pick a strong card and hit things. Action commands are still as simplistic, none of the variety of Thousand Year Door. Just timing a button press every time. Though for hammers, there's a better visual telegraphing for when you need to push the button to get an excellent. You still have the issue of wasting cards if you mess up the action command, which is just as annoying as it was in Sticker Star. Things are the same. Press A at the right time or mash it. Once again, there's a thing that uses the mic on the controller, a megaphone. Though unlike the cake in Sticker Star, it doesn't completely fail if you don't do that. It also isn't a healing item. Just like in Sticker Star, the farther in the game you go, you'll start being able to instantly defeat enemies without starting a battle. This happens if the damage you do with a first strike is enough to have killed the enemy. In Sticker Star, your first strike's power increased every 2 HP up hearts you got. While in Color Splash, it's simply when you rescue a big paint star, though you also get an HP up heart when you do. In Sticker Star, this barely had an effect as most enemies had more health than the max damage you could do. But in Color Splash, there's actually plenty of enemies you can defeat this way, which just make things feel so much better. Though it's hard to tell when you can defeat certain enemies, especially since you can't see how much damage you do or how much health they have. But it's nice that it actually has an effect now. One really annoying thing that can happen in battle is Kamek appearing. So randomly at the start of a battle, Kamek can appear and place a curse on your cards. This can do a few things, such as flipping your cards so you can't see what they are, which is very annoying given all your cards are in a straight line, making memorizing where specific cards are much more difficult than when you turn your stickers into flip-flops in Sticker Star. It can also take away all but a handful of your cards to limit what you can use, or other such annoying things. The worst part is that he disables your ability to run, so if you just want to get a move on, you can't. And you could end up accidentally wasting cards you didn't want to use. You do get a big coin bonus after the fight, but you're already so rich it doesn't matter, and it's just annoying when it happens. Also, it didn't happen to me, but apparently it can be possible to be put in an unwinnable fight if, say, Kamek limited you to using only hammers against flying enemies. This doesn't add anything to battles, it just makes them more annoying. The battle system does have some improvements, but it also does some stuff worse. And in the end, there really isn't much of a net gain or loss. It's about as bad as Sticker Star. Maybe being able to freely play up to 4 cards and the multi-hit cards are enough for it to slightly edge out on top of Sticker Star, but that's not by much. Nearly everything bad about Sticker Star's battle system is still here. The slight improvements don't change the systemic issues with it. Fighting enemies isn't fun and not worth doing. Running from them is still preferable, so the whole system still encourages you to avoid the battle system. Choosing a card to use is not satisfying because it gets wasted, and because of how vague the game is on damage and health numbers, it often doesn't do enough. The whole system discourages strategy, which takes away all the satisfaction of turn-based combat. As the game goes on, the battle system just becomes so fatiguing. At the start, the improvements did make it feel better, but just like Sticker Star, as the game went on, I just got sick of fighting enemies that I just started avoiding as much combat as possible. The game is bogged down so much by the battle system. It would be much more enjoyable if they just threw out turn-based combat entirely. It doesn't benefit from it at all. The times where I could just instantly defeat enemies without going into a battle made playing the game substantially more enjoyable. And when the game is made better by skipping one of its central mechanics, that's a big problem. As always, we get a short tutorial in the main town of the game. It's not as tedious as finding all the toads in Sticker Star, so it might be the best one after Thousand Year Door. You just go around hitting these things to activate the fountain where you meet Huey, then have a battle tutorial, then you learn about using paint. I'll go over painting things more later, but after talking to Huey once more, you just have to explore the town to find the small paint star at the top. So this is Port Prisma, the main town of the game. Just like Sticker Star, this is the only full town in the game, though there are other areas full of NPCs throughout the game. While Port Prisma isn't as big or as full as Toad Town, Rogueport, or Flipside, it's much better than Decalburg. It's actually laid out similarly to Rogueport, being a port town with a dock on the southern side and an east and west wing connecting to the center. In the center of town is the fountain. For each big paint star you reclaim, there will be an extra heart in the fountain to heal with. When you have all the stars, the fountain is filled with paint, which will fully heal you. There's also the completion flags, just like the ones in Sticker Star, but there's less of them, and thankfully they are much more reasonable to complete. First is to perform 200 excellent attacks. In Sticker Star, it was 1,000, so yeah, much better. Perform all cutouts, which is easy to do, but I'll talk about later. Collect 10,000 coins, which sounds like a lot, but whew, yeah, that one is really easy. Repaint all colorless spots, which is also simple. Purchase 200 battle cards, which you'll easily have the money to do it. You just have to go out of your way to do it because there's not much of a reason to buy cards normally. And lastly, defeat all the rock, paper wizards. I'll talk about that one later. Aside from, these are all much simpler to do and won't require much grinding at all, which is a very good thing as getting all the flags is required for the post-credit scene showing Huey survived. The west side of town is where the card shop is. This is actually the only card shop in the game. It doesn't get much use because you get an abundance of cards just playing normally, and there's still no way to store cards, which is still really annoying. There's a cafe, which there are a bunch throughout the game. You could use them to fully heal or replenish your paint. You can't use this because the Toad running it needs a break from all the excitement. In Ruddy Road, there's a cafe where the Toad there wants more excitement, so you get them to swap shops and you can use it now. You can do this pretty early on, but I didn't realize this until I was about to finish the game. Whoops. Not that you really need it. There are other ways to heal. There's also a post office over here where you can read letters received from various characters. Oh, like the first two games. Now you don't get as many letters as those games, but this is still nice and was missing from the last two games. At the start, you can't access the cafe or post office because this bridge is out, but it doesn't take too long until you find a bridge expert who repairs it. I love how these toads are always excited when you cross the bridge. The east part of town is where the museum is, though I'll go over that later. Right outside the museum is this toad who will let you practice action commands, which is nice. Peach and the toad she came with take residence in this building. If you talk to Peach, she will fully heal you for free, though after you recover the first big paint star, she gets kidnapped and you no longer have access to that. Though you can bring any of the hollow peaches you find to the toad who will comment on them, but nothing too interesting. This side of town is also where the Piper side stories happens, though there's really nothing more to it other than what I already talked about. Each friend only appears when you find them and restore their color, but honestly, I didn't realize that was them while playing, for obvious reasons I've already gone over. After their plant wilts, you'll need to go here to see this cutscene before I can wrap up. Though after they're reunited with Piper, you can find them outside the Crimson Tower. The most important thing on the east side of town is this is where the Toad Rescue Squad chief is located. At various points in the game, you'll need the help of one of the rescue squads, but the members of them have been scattered around and you need to find them. If you talk to the squad captain, then any of the cadets you find will go to him, where you'll use them to progress once you have them all. If you find any before finding the captain, they will go to Port Prisma with the chief. The chief will tell you how many of the cadets you're missing and if you missed any in the level you've already been to. This is very helpful as some levels are full of cadets, and you otherwise won't know if you missed any in a level. I had to return to Fort Cobalt a few times because I missed some of them. Some of these guys can be in rather clever locations. Although since the battle system is so bad that I just want to avoid enemies, there were a couple I missed because I was avoiding enemies, like this one on the train, or this one disguised as a sniffet. Anyways, you'll be checking in with the chief from time to time to make sure you're not missing any cadets. And now the south end of town. This is where you get things. Just like in Sticker Star, things are various real-world objects not made of paper, and they serve the exact same functions, and I still hate that they're called things. In battle, they are just strong special attacks, and out of battle, they are used for basic puzzle solving. Things contributed to a lot of the issues in Sticker Star, and they still do here for some of the same reasons. But they have been significantly improved in a few ways. So first off, the number of them has been drastically reduced. Sticker Star had 64 things, many of which were variations of the same one, like having 4 different scissors. There were a lot of redundant things, as most of them did the same thing in battle, with a very small amount doing something unique. And only a fraction of them were required for bosses or puzzles, which made figuring out which ones you needed much more difficult, and made you backtrack a lot. And a lot of them were behind secret doors, which added a ton of tedious backtracking on top of everything else. But here, there are only 27. Less than half of Sticker Star. Because of this, there's a lot less redundancy. More things are distinct. Now, in battle, most of them are still just strong attacking items, but still. More importantly, most of them actually have a specific use, whether it be for bosses or puzzles. Only 5 of them are optional. The rest have required uses. This means most of the time when you get a thing, you know it will be important, and because of the improved inventory, they only take up 1 card slot, so it's actually reasonable for you to be holding on to them. You could actually hold on to all of them and still have plenty of room for other cards. There's also replica things, which are just for battle. They can't be used for solving puzzles. They're just there so you can use them in regular battles, without wasting the real thing. One of the best improvements to things is that you no longer have to sling them. When you find a thing, you just instantly convert it into a card on the spot. This reduces backtracking so much. This alone substantially improves the game. You could pick up a thing in the same level it gets used without having to leave. You don't have to make a trip back to town every time you want to use one, and it just feels so much better. Now, you will still need to backtrack to get another one if you wanted to fill out the museum, or just ended up using one in battle, but it still reduces backtracking overall by not having to sling it as well. And also, buying things is much more convenient. There's a thing shop in the southern part of Port Prisma, works the same as Sticker Star, and the prices are similarly high. But that doesn't matter because this game's economy is broken. You get absolutely showered with coins in this game. In all the previous games, the max amount of coins you could hold was 999, but here it's 9,999, and I was maxed out before I got the second big paint star. It's disgusting how much money you get. And it's mostly because of Roshambo, but I'll talk about that later. Because of how much money you get, you'll never need to worry about buying things, which are still the only thing worth buying. So you never have to go out of your way to backtrack for specific things. You can just go to town and buy them. But by far, the single greatest change to things is this toad in a trash can near the thing shop. This toad will tell you a hint of what thing you'll need for the next puzzle or boss. This completely solves the issue Sticker Star had of not knowing what thing you needed and having to search everywhere for it. So much backtracking and pointless meandering is just gone because of this. It's great. Now, it can be easy to forget to talk to him in between levels, which can add a little bit of backtracking, but that's really not a big deal. And if you're not filling out the museum, you probably won't need him because most of them are important, and you can just hold on to all your things until they're needed anyways. All these changes greatly improve things, and the game as a whole. I don't hate things in this game. There's still some dumb puzzle solving moments with them. There's still the issue of the puzzles just being, do you have the thing on you? And they get used up when used or if put in the wrong spot. But it's so much better than Sticker Star, it's not even close. The museum returns and serves basically the same function. You can fill it out with the cards you collect. It's laid out differently though. Instead of this big room divided into halves with many doors, each having their own list of stickers in them, you have 3 doors for displaying cards. 1 door is for normal cards, 1 is for enemy cards, and the last is for thing cards. And in these rooms, instead of a hall with places for each sticker, there's 1 spot for the cards, and you use a menu to look at them. The process of placing them is also way faster, and it only shows you ones you haven't put. And you can just flick them up instead of having to use paperization and find the right sticker, then slowly place it. The museum is much improved in many ways, though a lot of that has to do with things being improved and the lack of secret doors. You also don't need to complete it to get all the completion flags. It's made a lot more convenient, though that convenience does kind of come at a downside. While it's nice to just have 1 room to place all the cards, you don't get the satisfaction of walking through the museum and looking at all the stickers hung up. You can only observe your collection through a menu. It still is pretty satisfying to fill out the museum, but not seeing them displayed does take a little away from that. They could have kept the convenience and also had a room that displayed all of them. But I suppose I'll take the convenience over Sticker Stars. It still has the issue of you having to give up your cards. So if you get a new thing that will be useful and also want to fill out the museum, you have to place it here, then get it again. Though that's not much of an issue since You don't have to sling things anymore, and because the economy is so busted, getting them back is not a hassle at all. But also, one really nice thing is you can test out the thing cards in the museum. So long as you put it in the museum, you can safely try them out to see what they do without having to get it back and wasting it on enemies. Though you can't with any other type of cards, which is annoying. It would be helpful to be able to test all of them, especially the enemy cards. Your reward for filling out the museum is a sound test like Sticker Star, though you get tracks added as you go on rather than getting it all at once. And you also unlock concept art, which is neat. I brought up a couple pieces of concept art already, but another one that sticks out is this page with Bowser. The top two are interesting. It seems the black paint would have acted like a cape, and maybe you'd have to fight it by itself after getting off Bowser. Could have been cool, though I'm not sure if this design would have worked for this game even if I do like it. Although this middle right one goes hard, what the hell? Again, probably wouldn't have worked for the game, but damn does it look cool. I never actually filled out the museum. Now in general, it's not nearly as tedious as trying to fill out sticker stars with all the improvements and conveniences this game offers. But there's one problem, the enemy cards. Some enemies in Sticker Star drop exclusive stickers. Similar concept, but a lot more enemies drop them. Most, if not all, enemies have a card. So if you want to fill out the museum, you gotta get grinding. There's even different cards for the different colored Shy Guys and Sniffets. Oh, I'm getting Dawn of Sorrow flashbacks. Yeah, I didn't have the patience for this. You'll get a bunch of these cards naturally, but not nearly all of them, especially if you start avoiding combat. And while the drop rates aren't as abysmal as some other games, grinding for specific cards is made super tedious because if you kill an enemy who has a card you need, well, it doesn't respawn until you leave the level. Normally that's a good thing, but unless the level has a lot of enemies you need, you'll repeatedly go through a level to find it, kill it, and when you don't get it, you have to restart the level. Yeah, I'll just look up the concept art online, because this is tedious and not worth my time. You don't need to fill out the museum to get the flags to see the after credit scene. It's not as bad as trying to get all the catch cards in Super, but it's still very tedious, and I don't want to do it. So this game is structured similarly to Sticker Star. Instead of having one big interconnected world like the first two games, it's divided into levels that you can access through a world map. Though unlike Sticker Star, the progression here is entirely linear. Sticker Star was actually a non-linear game. You could complete the chapters in whatever order you wanted. The game wasn't built very well for this, and it came with its own problems, but it was non-linear. Color Splash doesn't double down on this. You don't have multiple chapters open to you at the start. You can only go down a single set-out path. Occasionally, you can have multiple levels open to you, and some levels will require you to backtrack to them, but largely you are on a linear path. While it is a shame they didn't try to do a non-linear structure better, focusing on a good linear experience is preferable. Now the map is divided into 6 color-coded regions for each of the big paint stars, but your progression through the island isn't region by region. This is why it's hard to separate the game into chapters. A chapter can have you travel through multiple regions. The red paint star will have you go through some red levels, 2 blue levels, and a yellow level. The goal of each level is to find the mini paint star in the level, much like the comet pieces in Sticker Star. There can be multiples of them as well, and each one leads to another level. The color of the paint star shows what region the level will be. This actually helps Prism Island feel more like a real place in spite of the world map, because you aren't just going through each section like a world in any other game. The whole island is a single world that you're exploring, and that exploration takes you all over the place instead of just one part of the island at once. And it also keeps you guessing what kind of area you'll go next. What region will you go to next? It may not actually be an interconnected world, but it feels more like a connected world instead of the very segmented worlds of Sticker Star. Now as for the actual level design, it's thankfully much better than Sticker Star. It is an evolution of Sticker Star's level design, so it does a lot of similar things, but much better. There's a lot more wide open spaces, and they do more with the camera. The terrain is much more interestingly laid out, and more enjoyable to explore it. But it still has the issue of enemies making traveling through them much more annoying, especially as the game goes on. When you get to the point where you're just sick of fighting enemies, it gets pretty draining every time you're unable to avoid them. At least the game is much better at letting you instantly defeat enemies outside a battle than Sticker Star, so sometimes you can just avoid all battles. This game would be so much more fun without turn-based combat. Ignoring enemies, the level design is just better. After the combat tutorial, you can now use your hammer to paint the environment. You have a supply of red, blue, and yellow paint that you use up whenever you paint something, though you never have to worry about it running out, as painting things barely uses any up. And refilling your paint is easy, as there are globs of paint everywhere, in objects, just on the ground, and you get a ton back when you fight enemies. Depending on the area, you might not get back a lot of a specific color, but that was very rarely an issue. And with how you can upgrade your paint supply from fighting, yeah, you have more paint than you know what to do with. The main function of paint out of battle is to paint these colorless spots. There are a couple puzzles that use paint, but the vast majority used for paint are the colorless spots. There are colorless spots all over the place, most of which just give you coins or cards, but others you'll need to paint to progress. When something is lacking color, it doesn't move or work. A colorless pipe, or even one with a colorless spot on it, won't let you pass through. Even water stops flowing without color. There's some mild puzzle solving you do with this, but it's mostly for exploration. Each level has a ton of colorless spots, and you have to paint them all for completion. Most of them are out in the open, but some can be pretty well hidden. Sometimes the lighting or the color of a level can make it hard to see them, like this spot. It's barely visible and I had to go through the level multiple times to find it. These spots add a lot of exploration value to the game, more so than Sticker Star, which, to its credit, did a decent job with it. Now, since most of the spots are out in the open, there is a concern that it could become tedious, as there's no challenge in just walking up to it and hitting it. But unlike peeling stickers, it never really loses its charm because it's faster and it isn't tied to a terrible inventory. And it's just satisfying filling them out. You're bringing color back to the world and you see the results immediately. Sure, on a pure mechanical level, it could be described as busy work, but it's the same basic principle of picking up coins, or any small collectible that's usually all over the place. The colorless spots are the primary reason for exploration. In Sticker Star you had the HP up hearts, which you found through exploration, but they're now given to you when you rescue a big paint star. Also, the secret doors have been cut, which is a good thing. Those sucked and added on a lot of backtracking. But it is one less thing to find through exploration. So it really is just the colorless spots that make up most of the optional exploration. But I think they do a fine enough job. There's also these doors where you need to hit them at the right time to match the colors. And depending on the color, you'll get a different minigame. These are okay, I guess, but I kind of forgot about them most of the game. Now, unfortunately, the level design is still held back because of the simple mechanics of the game. You have a very small and simple moveset that, even in the much improved level design, you're not doing a lot in the levels. It's not like a platformer where you use a simple moveset to navigate obstacle courses. With the first two games, you had extra moves and partner abilities, and even Super with the multiple characters and all the pixels, you had a lot of options to potentially use to navigate the environment and solve puzzles. You had to consider all you had to figure out what to use, and it made it more satisfying when you realized what you needed to do. But in Color Splash, because of the lack of abilities, there's really not much that they can do. If there are colorless spots, paint them. Otherwise, hit stuff with a hammer, hit the cutout button, or leave to find more rescue toads. Occasionally you can find these unfurl blocks, which when you hit them, you have a limited time to hit a specific object to unfurl it. The challenge is to simply make your way to the object in the time limit. It's neat, but again with the simple mechanics, it doesn't really amount to much outside walking to the object. That's all you can really do. So while it is much better than Sticker Star, it still leaves a lot to be desired when compared to the first three games. But in terms of just the pure level design, I'd say Color Splash is the best of the series so far. The paperization mechanic from Sticker Star is gone and replaced by the cutout ability. It serves a similar function, but it does things differently. The whole mechanic of finding boxes and putting stickers in them to upgrade it or swap it for a different sticker is completely removed. You still use Cutout to place thing cards in specific locations to solve puzzles, but there's a lot less of them, and there's never an instance where a normal card is used. And also the aspect of finding scraps and putting them in the right place, or removing a scrap that's in the wrong place, or put on the wrong way to correct it isn't there. So much like there were hidden boxes to place stickers in with paperization, there are hidden cutout lines. You use the ability the same way, but it only activates when there's something to cut out, though you could still use it to locate them. But here there's a visual clue even without using it. You need to pay attention to the environment to see where there are lines like this, though it is pretty difficult to see them. There are secret ones that give you some cards that can be very well hidden, but most of the time when you use it, it's to cut out a part of the environment, which you are then put in the gap so you can move to a new location. This is what it's mostly used for, to get to otherwise unreachable places. This mechanic is fine. It's neat how you need to pay attention to the environment unlike paperization where you just guess. But honestly, paperization is the more interesting mechanic, at least conceptually. In execution, yeah, cutout is better. But the idea of using your stickers to alter the environment was a cool idea. I would have liked it if that was expanded upon. There was a lot more potential for paperization that wasn't met, and it would have been nice if they did meet it here. But they went with a less interesting mechanic. Cutout, honestly, is just the same as going into a pipe and appearing in the background in Thousand Year Door, but you need to see where the lines are in the environment. It's alright, but it hardly shakes up the gameplay or add any meaningful exploration or puzzle value. At least it doesn't actively take away from the game. One of the completion flags in Port Prisma is for finding all the cutout locations in the game. This includes the optional ones just for cards. At first it seems like it would be a nightmare to keep track of, as the levels themselves don't track how many are in or if you found any. But at the end of the game, this toad appears near the rescue squad chief. He will tell you where all the cutout locations are, which is very convenient. I like how strange and shady he's portrayed, and after you talk to him when you found them all and come back here, he's just gone. I won't go over each chapter equivalent, as there isn't really an overarching theme to most of the levels contained in a chapter. Some of them do, like there's a consistent progression to the levels on the path to the purple and orange stars, but most levels are very separate from everything surrounding them. Though I suppose since the purple and orange stars do have a consistent theme to them, I'll go over them. The path to the purple star starts with Violet Passage. You can go here at an earlier point, but you need the big blue star to paint the water first. This chapter is about heading to Fortune Island and overcoming various obstacles along the way. First you need to cross the Lost Sea, which is one of the most distinct levels as you'll need to navigate the ship itself. It's pretty simple, just read the clues you found in the ship to know when to turn. There's also a target minigame and a part where you need to collect enough coins. The atmosphere of this level is great, and while the tasks are simple, they are enjoyable enough. Though if you turn the wrong way or fail one of the minigames, they force you into a battle. It's one weak enemy you can beat in one turn, but why was this necessary? Isn't making me start over punishment enough? After this point, you get a few levels where the main mechanic is swapping between this world and a parallel world. The atmosphere continues to be great in this chapter. You'll have to solve puzzles where you do something in one world and it'll affect the other, your typical two-world mechanics. And they do get the most out of it with 3 levels. It's the most consistent mechanic any chapter has. The orange star is all about getting this train moving, first fixing the tracks, then repairing it, then helping the Toads out at their destination. You don't actually board the train until the end when it's hijacked by Larry. Toad Trainworks is a fun level. You first get here before the train needs to be repaired, and because of that you can just freely take the paint star, no strings attached. Of course, the real level comes when the train arrives and a bunch of Shy Guys are running amok, and you have to clear them out and repair the train yourself. Tangerino Grill has you helping the chef by preparing a pizza. Wait, they did the thing the first 2 games did where you have to heat something for a specific amount of time and make sure you time it right. After that, you have to battle a steak to prepare it just right. You have to hit it with your hammer to tenderize it, make sure it's seasoned, and add flavor with a lemon, and cook it on a grill. You have to use 3 things, and you have to use them all at the right time or you have to start over. If this was Sticker Star, this would probably be one of the worst parts of the game. But here you can buy things from this Toad, which helps a lot. And the final level on this path is mostly a straight run through the train helping out all the Toad Rescue Squad. Nothing much else to say. The other stars don't have a consistent theme to them, just being made up of more individual levels. Sometimes a level will lead to another, like Moss Rock Theater leads to the Emerald Circus, but most of them are pretty separate. I won't go over every level, but I will talk about the ones that stood out the most. Dark Blue Inn is one of the most obvious ones to talk about. It has a similar feel to the Enigma Mansion from Sticker Star. That was the best level from that game, and actually a surprisingly good one. It really stood out because it was on a level of quality the rest of the game didn't reach. But if that level was in this game, it wouldn't stick out much at all because the levels are consistently of a similar quality. I had a friend describe Color Splash as a game full of Enigma Mansions, and that's not wrong. Dark Blue Inn is a similar concept to the Enigma Mansion, being a haunted building, this time a hotel. Luigi's Mansion 3 was probably in development at this time. I wonder if that influenced this level. Wouldn't be the first time Paper Mario alluded to a Luigi's Mansion game that hadn't been released yet. But anyways, this level doesn't really stand out that much because the quality of the levels across the game are consistently higher than Sticker Star. It's probably a better level than the Enigma Mansion, but that level stood out more. Not to say this level has nothing that stands out. Spooky, haunted levels will always stand out for me, and this level does some cool stuff. It's not combat focused like the Enigma Mansion. Instead, the ghosts are toads, actual ghost toads. Each one has their own problem you have to help fix, from finding the right book to revealing a door they're looking for, to getting some actual room service to change sheets. For one of them, you have to find this lost red bird. So you take the bird cage outside, and a paratroopa just goes into the cage. The toad accepts it and leaves, but if you talk to the paratroopa, he's like, "I ain't no stinking boy. my dude, you willingly got in the cage. I didn't make you do this. There's another one where, as you enter the room, a shy guy holding something invisible jumps out the window, and the toad wants it back. So you go and find him and have to fight this sledge bro, and he talks about how he wanted to sit on it, and the others run away. So you pick it up, and it's just called It. And now I'm getting concerned. Is this the same situation as the tape, the box, and the you-know-what from the first 3 games? Well, you bring it back, and if you paint it, it was a Yoshi. And now I have even more questions. What is this game? You actually find that Yoshi again in the Emerald Circus trying to free other Yoshis. Once you've solved all the ghost problems, you still need to find a tea kettle, which is found in the next level, Plum Park. This level is good too, does poison water better than all of Chapter 3 in Sticker Star, and it has a nice aesthetic. Before you can get the tea kettle, you need to fight Petey Piranha, or PT Piranha, rather. This level also has a similar Birdo cameo to the one in Sticker Star. Apparently Birdo randomly appearing and singing is a new tradition to these games. At least this one makes more sense as it was an actual stage performance instead of just happening at the top of a mountain. She doesn't give you a goat though, sadly. Speaking of traditions, Sniff It or Whiff It returns. Still not continuing the game show gag from the first 3 games, but it seems Sniff It or Whiff It is just replacing that. I hate to say it, but it's not as good as Sticker Star's version. That was one of the few good things in that game, but here? So before you enter, you can talk to this guy who will sell you a bunch of cards. And you'll want to buy it because Sniff It or Whiff It requires you to use specific cards. And he will give you all the cards you'll need. You have to get through 7 rounds plus 3 bonus rounds. Each one you have to identify what cards are shown and use them to win the round. There are various patterns, like parts of the card spinning, being obscured by kelp, and being entwined with another card. You'll even have to match how much paint was on one. This isn't bad by any means, but it's not as interesting as the one in Sticker Star. Yeah, it was just a quiz, whack-a-mole, and a shuffle game, but the poison gas in the first 2 added a lot, and especially the bonus round, which combined them. There's not an extra twist to this one. It also relies on having the right cards, which, again, this guy has, but if you have too many cards on you, you'll have to get rid of some to make room. The bonus rounds are just harder versions of a few of the other rounds, not a cool combination like in Sticker Star. Also, if you fail any of the bonus challenges, you just die instantly. Although you can buy the bonus set from this Sniffed, which will bring you right to the bonus round, so that's something, I guess. Green Energy Plant is the most out there level in this game. It starts out pretty normal as you're trying to bring power back to this lab. Once you do, you use Cutout to go into the TV, and now you're playing Mario 3. But also Super Paper Mario because you can flip into 3D. Obviously you don't control like Mario 3, so platforming is simple here, so you're mostly exploring around with the flipping mechanic to find secret passages. Some of the secrets are pretty clever too, and it has one of the cruelest colorless spots in the game, this Cloud's Eye. Normally I'd be annoyed at the Mario 3 pandering. Nintendo really likes to call back to Mario 3 all the time, and it gets really tiring. It was really refreshing when Odyssey pandered to 64 instead. But this was actually a pretty cool use of it. I would have preferred Mario World, but hey, this is a good level, and I can't really complain about it. Though for some reason there are flagpoles at the end. Why would you make this Mario 3 and have flagpoles to the end instead of how Mario 3 ended levels? Okay, well, the paint star is in one of those boxes, but there's still a flagpole right behind it. Why? I want to highlight Sunglow Ridge. There's not much to talk about the level itself, but early on you get this scene where you see a bonsai bill explode off in the distance. Later you find where it blew up and the area is covered in black paint. Black paint is very hazardous, doing 30 damage on contact. You'd think black paint would be an obstacle you have to avoid, or you'd have to figure out how to clean it up, but nope, once you run into it, Huey just cleans it up for you. This is the only time you encounter black paint outside the final level where, aside from playing a part in the fight with Roy, and obviously Bowser, it's only an obstacle once you run away from it while it's flooding everything. It's a neat set piece, but for being the primary threat, black paint doesn't really do much. It's very underutilized. There isn't really a standout best level in the game like how the Enigma Mansion was easily the best in Sticker Star. The levels are all pretty consistent in quality across the board, but there is one level that stands out as the worst, Moss Rock Theater. This is easily the worst level in the game. So the Enigma Mansion felt like a Color Splash level in Sticker Star, but Moss Rock Theater feels like a Sticker Star level in Color Splash. If you want an easy way to see how much the level design improved over Sticker Star, just play any other Color Splash level, then play this. It's weird, this one level is just worse than all the others in a notable way, that I can't help but feel like it might have been intentionally designed to be bad. Okay, it's not especially egregious. If it was in Sticker Star, it wouldn't be very notable, and it still ends up being better just by having Color Splash's mechanics. So it starts off basically just as a straight line forward, but they keep throwing enemies at you. and you have these dino rhinos just appear out of nowhere spewing fire that you can't react fast enough to avoid. And you just have to deal with this for a while, until you get to this part with the Hammer Brothers. They'll constantly be throwing hammers at you while you're trying to platform. Oh, but first you need to go down here to get the Shy Guys off the bridge so you can progress. And it's annoying. After that, it's more of the beginning part until you reach a fork in the road. If you go left, you find 2 paint stars. 2, which means you get 1, are booted out of the level, and have to play the entire level again, including the Hammer Brothers part, just to get back to get the other one. Oh, but wait, this level has 3 paint stars, so you have to play all that again to take the other path. And on that path is another Hammer Brothers section, which is just as annoying, and you have to fight them after you get across. What happened with this level? Like, it wouldn't be a contender for the worst Sticker Star level. There are far worse levels in that game, but it is a real sour moment for Color Splash. There's one main optional minigame, I guess, you could play, Roshambo. At various points when you complete a level, a Roshambo token will appear. When you've collected it, a Roshambo temple will show up on the map. At the temple, you play 3 rounds of rock, paper, scissors. It's rock, paper, scissors, I don't have to explain it. The first 2 rounds will have a hint about what cards they will or won't pick you can read outside, which is neat, though it does kind of guarantee that you'll win most of the time. The 3rd round will be completely up to luck as they don't restrict what cards they use. And there's no strategy they have, you just have to guess. Each round you are rewarded with hundreds of coins. It's ridiculous. It doesn't take you very long to become filthy rich and have money be basically worthless just by playing Roshambo. You also get a brand new car if you win all 3 rounds. But it's nothing you can't get elsewhere, and it pales in comparison to the money hoard you'll accumulate. Now if you lose, you can't try again without getting another paint star or by paying your way in, though the cost of doing so is much lower than the reward you get by playing. Each temple increases the price, but it isn't until the literal last one, where it costs 1,000 coins, that it means anything. That actually will drain your money. Even at my most unlucky, where I kept losing, I still came away with a full wallet. At first, these temples were a fun distraction. Rock, paper, scissors is a classic and fun game. They have a cool presentation to them, and you get super rich. But as the game went on, these devolved into the worst part of the entire game. I now hate Roshambo. Never ask me to play rock, paper, scissors ever again. We're flipping a coin to settle disputes from now on. Ugh. So here's the problem. It's rock, paper, scissors. It's inherently luck-based. There's no skill involved. You can't even develop a strategy based on observing how your opponent plays the game like you could with an actual person, because it's all against an AI. So the psychological aspect of the game isn't there, which takes the fun away. Having a luck-based minigame isn't inherently an issue, but the big problem is if you lose, no matter what round you're in, you get booted out and have to start again. For most of them, the price to try again isn't an issue, it's that it makes the process of completing the temple extremely tedious because every failed attempt means you have to go over here to buy your way in again, then sit through the cutscenes, which you can skip, but it still takes a second to get to each round. Then beat the rounds you already beat again to get to where you lost. The first 2 rounds are basically guaranteed victories for most of them, but that just makes having to replay them every attempt tedious when you just want to get to the final round, and every time you tie with them it just takes longer. But also, if you fail 3 times, suddenly the first 2 rounds act like the final round and don't have specific cards they pick. So now you have to go all 3 rounds hoping that you get lucky enough to pick the right card 3 times in a row. If you want to make the first 2 rounds stop being luck-based, you have to leave and get a paint star to reset it. And you know, all this really wouldn't be that big of a problem, except there are 8 Roshambo temples. 8! And actually, the temples don't count as being beaten until you defeat the Rock Paper Wizard, and he doesn't show up until you've beaten a Koopaling, so you might end up going through 16 of these. You can just not do them until the Rock Paper Wizard is there, which I realized way too late into the game. The process of beating each of these was just awful. It started out fine, but it never changes. It's the same every time. It's just rock, paper, scissors. There's not much you can do differently. The only thing that changes is what the first 2 rounds will do. The final round is always completely random, and that's the one that will be the problem. Sometimes you get lucky and beat it quickly, but some of these temples took forever because they just kept beating me. And again, if you fail 3 times, the first 2 rounds become completely luck-based as well. Multiple of these took entire recording sessions to beat, which is around 20 to 30 minutes. And one of them took damn near an hour. I swear, it feels like the AI is reading my cards with how much they just immediately beat me on their first hand. There was one round where we just kept drawing the same card until finally I changed the card and we still tied. Then they beat me. And then there's the final one. For this one, all 3 rounds are always entirely random. You can't just be guaranteed a win against the first 2. And because the last one costs 1,000 coins to try again, you basically have to leave to go get a paint star every time you lose, which is incredibly tedious. The constant back and forth makes it likely the Shy Bandit will spawn, wasting even more time. Roshambo just sucks. There should have only been one, and maybe as you progress, more challengers would appear until you finally face the wizard at the end. Oh, and also don't make you refight the ones you already beat. Now this is optional, thankfully, but not if you want to get all the flags and see the secret post-credits scene revealing Huey survived. And also not if you want to complete the museum, because each rock paper wizard you defeat gives you a Koopaling card. And also the Kamek card. And this is the only way to get those cards too. So if you want to put them in the museum and use them in battle, well, you have to play more Roshambo. All of them do the same thing, which is instantly defeat all enemies. At that point, just run from battle. I have no idea what they would do against bosses, but I have to assume it's the same as the other enemy cards, so it really isn't worth it. Well, if you didn't know how rock, paper, scissors could possibly be ruined, there you go. I'm not kidding, this is the worst part of the game. It severely hurt the pacing of the game, and was just so frustrating and tedious every time. It's not fun when you unlock a new one. It's just... every time one appears. I hate it. Fuck Roshambo. And now for the bosses. The boss fights in Sticker Star were awful. The worst part of an already very bad game. They were some of the worst bosses I've ever experienced in any game. The reason they are so bad comes a lot from the general problems with that game's battle system. But the main issue is that they were essentially puzzle-locked bosses. But Sticker Star's idea of puzzles is just using the correct thing sticker, which you probably won't have on you, so that forces you to backtrack to find it so you can actually fight the boss. Now the bosses were possible to beat without the correct thing, but doing so is extremely difficult and so unreasonable to do, and the game clearly doesn't want you to fight them that way, to the point where Kirsty will scold you for doing it. So how are Color Splash's bosses? Well, much like the battle system in general, they're pretty similar but with some key differences. So specific things are still needed to fight these bosses, but this time they actually are required. As I said, you could defeat the Sticker Star bosses without their weakness, even if it was highly unreasonable, but here if you don't have the required thing, you won't be able to damage the boss, or in some cases the boss will just instantly kill you. On paper, this sounds horrible and much worse than Sticker Star, but with the improvements to things, mainly this toad telling you what things you'll need, it's actually not that bad. Now, of course, this means that you'll need to talk to this toad to know what to bring, as the solution is never obvious before the fight, but you should already be constantly checking with him anyways. It's still not great design to have to talk to this toad to know what item you need to bring, otherwise you literally can't defeat the boss. It's kind of a band-aid solution to the problem of the puzzle design of these games, but at least it's something, and it's not a hassle to talk to him anyways. So now you have bosses that require things to beat, not too dissimilar to Sticker Star, but you'll at least know what thing to bring, which does eliminate the biggest issue. But that wasn't the only issue with them. Once the weakness was used, it basically invalidated the bosses. It goes from unreasonably difficult to pathetically easy. The bosses in Color Splash are generally better balanced and overall designed, though they still have their problems, and can be a mixed bag. Morton is the first boss, and he's mostly inoffensive. You can fight him before having got the required thing, so he'll just one-shot you, which is annoying, but otherwise there's not much special about him. He doesn't have any special gimmicks. He starts on a pedestal, which you easily get rid of. He's just there to teach you that you need their weakness, or the fight is unwinnable. Iggy was a pain, but not necessarily because of the fight itself, but more because the battle system just sucks. So the thing you need to fight him is actually in the same level, but you can't get to it until you've got into a fight with Iggy and ran away. After a while, he'll retreat on his chariot and you can't hit him without the correct thing. So when I reached this point in the fight, I ran, but after that I tried looking around the arena to see if I could find anything and accidentally got back into the fight. But then the game refused to let me run away. I kept trying to run, but it didn't work, so I ended up dying. So I made another attempt, having to do the beginning part of the level again, and so at the start of the fight I tried running again because there's no point in wasting cards in an unwinnable fight anyways. But it again refused to let me run, so I died again. I was starting to think that you couldn't run until you progressed in the fight, but thankfully on my third attempt it actually let me run. And the kicker is the thing you needed ended up being the bone, which you got and used in a puzzle earlier, but now it's here. Actually, the thing sales toad wouldn't let me buy one around the time. I didn't check its original placement, so I'm not sure if it's possible to bring one in the first time, though probably not. But at this point, the fight is pretty straightforward. Ludwig is when they get more interesting, as his fight is more gimmicky. He's on his Lud ship, which you can't damage normally. Instead, you need to use Tanuki tails to bounce back his projectiles to destroy it. Sticker Star had a couple fights like this, and they were annoying, but mostly because it relied on you having them when you wouldn't know you need them. The airship level did have a decent amount of them in the level, but you still wouldn't know going in, and if you ran out, you'd be out of luck. That's still a potential here, but in this level you can talk to this toad, and if you order the special, which costs more money than you can hold, so it's pretty suspicious, the toad will tell you about a card that will be able to defeat the super weapon, and then he gives you a ton of tail cards. That clearly states what you need to fight the boss and provides you with the resources to do it, which was such a breath of fresh air coming off of Sticker Star. So you are now prepared to fight the boss without the need to backtrack out of the level, as long as you brought the thing you need, of course. Even though the fight is all about reflecting projectiles, you still need to use the balloons to lift him out of the water or he'll dive. Kinda like the Cheep Cheep with the fishing hook in Sticker Star, but much better. This fight is actually pretty decent, but it starts a trend of bosses that would actually be pretty good if they were in Thousand Year Door. The idea behind the boss is good, but it suffers under this battle system. All the issues with the battle system don't go away just because the boss has decent mechanics. One issue here is, ironically, with the improved way the tails work, because they don't disappear until you take damage. If you are successful in reflecting all his attacks, and he doesn't summon enemies where you can attack, you have to waste a card that won't do anything because there's no do nothing command. Look at this. These spikes are on the ship, so I can't attack them because I can't choose who to target, and the ship is in the front, so that is what will be attacked. But I can't damage the ship other than reflecting projectiles. But I already have the tail on, so I can't put one on as my turn. So there goes this card. You could use this as an opportunity to heal, but if you're in this situation, it means you didn't take damage last turn, so you likely don't need to heal. Do you see why a do nothing command is important and how it would solve a lot of the issues? Not everything, but it would make things so much better. I really want to know who it was that thought these games didn't need a do nothing command. Next up is Wendy, and she doesn't have any interesting gimmicks or mechanics. She has this attack you need to use the camera to create a decoy to avoid, but otherwise, it's just kind of a standard boss like Morton and Iggy. Other than the inherent issues of the battle system, there's nothing wrong with the fight, which does make it way better than any of Sticker Star's fights, but that's not saying much. Larry, as good as his portrayal is, his fight kinda sucks. But it's another case where it would be good if it was in Thousand Year Door. So after dealing damage to him, he'll have a Shy Guy give him hearts to fully restore him. And to stop this, you have to defend this toad for a few turns so he can chase him off. That is actually a pretty cool concept for a Paper Mario boss, just not with this game's battle system. So here's how it works. Larry will stay up here and summon 3 enemies. You have to defeat them all or they will attack the toad on their turn, which will set back any progress he's made. Every turn you successfully defend the toad, he will move up a little bit, and after 3 turns he will stop the Shy Guy, and you can fight Larry. The problem is how vague this battle system is. It starts out easy with normal Shy Guys, but then he starts summoning stacked enemies. Stacked enemies need to be hit 1 time for each enemy that's part of the stack, which makes single hit attacks useless. And for the larger stacks, it makes your options limited. So while some will tell you how many are in a stack, not all of them do, so it can be a pain knowing what the right card to use is. Sometimes you can plan things out, but if you have one slight miscalculation, that's it. This paratrooper was too strong for a worn out jump, so that failed. Okay, how about a hop slipper? Oh, he's too strong for that to work either, so it failed again. Okay, how about a thing and a ton of hop slippers? Oh, the thing killed them all, and I just wasted all those jumps. Okay, so just use things to instantly wipe them. Oh, this one didn't actually kill them all. You see the problem? Because you have no way of telling how much health they have or how much damage you do to them, you can't properly strategize. You can't try to be efficient with your cards or experiment because doing so leads to failure. How was I supposed to know the light bulb wasn't strong enough to kill a paratrooper? And that's not all. Here I used a PAL block to kill or stun the first Shy Guy, as well as get rid of the coal block the stack in the back had. Which was a good strategy, except the game didn't accept it. The first Shy Guy was crumpled, but that didn't matter. The toad was also crumpled, so he couldn't move. But even worse, crumpling the enemies doesn't stop them from attacking the toad. Strategy doesn't work here, so screw it. Just use a ton of cards that will probably be wasted just to guarantee you do enough damage or figure out which things are strong enough to kill a paratrooper. The single paratroopers make this fight so annoying. Now once you've figured out which cards give the best results after trial and error, there's still a problem. So for this phase, Larry will use the smokestack to cover you in smoke, which will cause you to miss every attack. You need the cork to stop this. Now usually you talk to the Toad to find this out, but this level requires a thing before the fight, and for some reason the Toad doesn't tell you about the cork. There are other times where he'll tell you about 2 things at a time, so I'm not sure why he doesn't do that here as well. It's a cool idea for a fight, but this battle system just messes it up so much. This fight would work so well in Thousand Year Door. Lemmy isn't much better, unfortunately. He's on this ball, and one of the things you need to bring is an ice pick to pop it. However, if you use it now, he'll summon another one that makes him able to dodge all your attacks. So you need to deplete enough of his health to where he switches them himself. And you need to use a disco ball to get him dancing so he can't dodge the ice pick. While that's a tad annoying, the main issue is Lemmy can just get rid of one of your cards, including thing cards. You can't predict when he'll do this or what card he'll do it to. Depending on it, your strategy can just completely fail. So again, you need to throw strategy out the window and just spam a ton of cards instead. Occasionally in the older games, you could get in a situation where one of your attacks gets taken away, but it worked there as it's usually an attack that does it that you can prevent by guarding. And because it's not a consumable-based battle system, you aren't wasting resources, and now it's a challenge of fighting without that option. Here, it's just annoying. And that just leaves Roy for the Koopalings. At least he's much better. He has an interesting gimmick where he takes all your paint and uses it to shoot at you, and the different colors give you a different status effect. Red paint makes you angry and attack faster, which makes action commands harder. Orange paint makes Mario self-conscious, which is funny, but it makes it so you can only use pre-painted cards. Purple poisons you. That's it. Blue paint makes it so you can only use blue painted cards. Yellow makes you dance and you can't use cards with blue on them. And green makes you unmotivated and it slows down your attacks. After being dealt enough damage, Roy will mix all the paint and cover everything in black paint so you can't attack him. But using a washing machine fixes that. This is another neat idea that would be better in Thousand Year Door, though some of the statuses would have to change. But at least there's nothing especially wrong with this fight. It's probably one of the better ones, if not the best one. And then there's Bowser. Oh boy. Okay, so the Bowser fight in Sticker Star was possibly the worst boss I've ever fought. Thankfully, this one isn't nearly as bad as that one, but damn does it have its issues. The first phase is mostly fine, but one really annoying thing is that you can't jump on him because of his horns. This was also the case in Sticker Star, but it's worse here because that fight was just using the correct things at the right time. This is a more normal fight, and an entire class of attacks is just invalid. If you're bringing in a ton of strong jumping attacks, you just can't use them. Unless they're iron jumps, they are wasting space in your inventory. The final boss is supposed to test you on your knowledge of the battle mechanics, so taking away a significant amount of options, the jumping attacks, just restricts what you could even do in the fight. Like, what if the Shadow Queen took away your partners? That would be a significantly less interesting fight. Not that the game leaves much room for strategy anyways, but it's still annoying. Once you get to phase 2, the fight nosedives. Now the amount of damage you do to him will alter the attack he does. The more damage you deal, the stronger his attack will be. But no matter what the attack, he'll heal the damage you dealt. The way you do permanent damage to him is you have to successfully block the attack with Huey, who will absorb the paint. It's kinda a similar concept to Huff and Puff, and it's not a bad idea for a fight, but again, it would be good in Thousand Year Door, but here it's a pain. It can be rather tough to block the attacks, which would be fine in a game that didn't have a battle system revolving around consumables. If you're bad at blocking them, then you'll continue to not make any progress while losing cards. And if you run out of cards, well, you'll be forced to use the battle spinner trying to get any hammers to even be able to hit him. Yeah, this happened to me, and it really sucked. Now, if you bring in a ton of huge hammers and get good at blocking, it's not so bad. But damn, this battle system is just bad. So many of these battles could have been much better with Thousand Year Door's battle system. They'd actually be really creative and standout bosses too, but they are held back so much. You shouldn't even be put in this situation even if it was brought by lack of skill. Now, none of these bosses reach Sticker Star quality, those were much worse, but some of these can be frustrating. At least there are some decent ones and some cool ideas, even if they'd be better in a different game. And well, that's Paper Mario Color Splash. A game that's many things, but most importantly, it's a very interesting game. I spent years silently hating this game because it showed that Sticker Star wasn't a one-and-done bad game. It had lasting effects. The future of the series was bleak. One change in the formula was one thing, a second on handheld was a bad sign, but perhaps things could go back to normal now? But 2 games of the same style in a row? The chances of going back now are the lowest they've yet been. For that, I hated this game. Well, no. What I really truly hated was Sticker Star. Sticker Star was the cause of this. Sticker Star was the coffin, Color Splash was just another nail. But it's been a long time since this game came out. It's been a long time since that initial sting of realizing that we're not getting classic Paper Mario back. I've had a long time to think, to talk with more people about it, and I've fully released all my frustrations with Sticker Star. And I think that video, along with some other stuff, is when I've reached acceptance. I've moved on. My resentment of Sticker Star is gone. And with it, so is my resentment of Color Splash. I was finally able to look upon Color Splash, not with anger, but now with curiosity. The picture of what this game was had been tainted by first impressions and that resentment I had towards Sticker Star. But now that's gone, and I have talked to people who managed to enjoy the game while also hating Sticker Star. That isn't an uncommon sentiment online. Many people who hated Sticker Star do genuinely like this game. So maybe it isn't just Sticker Star 2. Maybe it's something more. Maybe it's actually good. I became more curious about this game, and much more interested in trying it, even if I still had some reservations. I was finally ready to play it. And well, Color Splash is indeed Sticker Star 2. It took what Sticker Star did and built upon it, but that's not as bad of a thing as it sounds. It is a huge improvement on Sticker Star. In every conceivable way, it surpasses it significantly. It's a much better game than Sticker Star, but it is still a follow-up on Sticker Star, and while it's vastly improved, it still carries a lot of the flaws of that game, and it's frustrating. This game is this special kind of frustrating where it does have a lot to enjoy, but way too many annoying and poorly thought out design decisions that hurt the overall experience. The potential is so clear, so obvious, that it's frustrating that it just doesn't reach it. While playing the game, I experienced a very weird mix of enjoying the good parts of it and wanting to keep going to see what more there is, and getting so burnt out by the bad parts that just made me want to quit playing. It's like an extreme version of Super Paper Mario, where that game's gameplay was rather lackluster and tedious at times, but the story was so good that it was able to carry me through the game anyways. But it's kind of the opposite of that really, because the highs of that game were very high, while the lows weren't really that low. With Color Splash, it does have some decently high highs, but they aren't nearly as high as the first 3 games' highs. And the lows can reach down to Sticker Star's lows. Not as low as Sticker Star's lowest lows, but that's still pretty low. And those lows really hurt the game, like a lot. Not enough to ruin the game completely, but enough to where they can't be ignored. But also the highs can't be ignored either. They managed to carry the game even with all its flaws. It's only barely able to do so, and the lows really eat away at your patience for it. But the highs of this game are high enough to counter the lows to an extent. The writing and dialogue of the game is so much better, and the level design and puzzle design is greatly improved. The game has a lot going for it. But unfortunately, the tedium of the bad parts builds up a lot over the course of the game. Near the end, the good parts weren't really outweighing the bad parts anymore. By the time of the Larry fight, I was getting pretty burnt out by the game, and there was still another big paint star left. And this does mostly just come from the battle system. The battle system, which was the worst part of Sticker Star, is on a similar level of bad as that game. It does have some improvements to help alleviate the issues, but not enough. I still fell back on avoiding most enemies just like Sticker Star because it's just not fun, and it still suffers from sanitization. The story is better than Sticker Star, but not by much. It still has a toad problem, and it kinda hurts more because it gets in the way of the more interesting theming of the story. We still have a lack of new characters. The series' staple characters like Peach, Bowser, and Luigi lacking greatly from their appearances in the first 3 games. And it's just... the more I think about the game, the more negative I get about it. But it is pretty enjoyable most of the time. I would say most of the game is good. It's just the bad parts are really loud. So loud they often drown out the good. At the beginning, I said going into the game I was neutral to it. And well, after all this time, that just ended up being how I feel. I'm pretty neutral towards Color Splash. I don't hate it. I don't love it either. There are aspects I hate about it, and aspects I love about it. But all around, as a complete package, I'm pretty neutral towards it. It's an okay game. Kinda anticlimactic given how much it contributed towards my hatred of Sticker Star, and I finally play it after all these years and walk away without any real strong perspectives on it, just thinking it's okay. And the funny thing is, when I started this Paper Mario Marathon, this was the latest game in the series. I was intending to end this marathon here because that was the end. A marathon going over the extreme highs and the extreme lows of the series. Ends on a pretty neutral note. But well, as you all know, the series didn't end with Color Splash. Frustratingly, in the middle of my marathon, another game was announced and released. Well, I guess I can't end it here then. So next up is, what will hopefully still be the last game in the series by the time I finish it, Paper Mario: The Origami King.
So we're fine, as long as nobody mixes any paint. Question. What's your question, soldier? I mixed paint. What? You told me to. How much? I have done nothing but mix paint for 3 days. There have you been sending it?
Well, it's about time I got this one done. Sorry it took so long. It really shouldn't have. I know a lot of you have been waiting for this video for a long time, and I wanted to get this done months ago, but this proved to be another hard one to make. The script was also tougher to write than I expected. Writer's block hit me hard multiple times, especially when talking about themes. That section went through multiple rewrites and restructuring. I had this idea of what I wanted to communicate, but actually finding the right words and structure for it was difficult. I kept putting it off as I did other parts of the script while it was just a rambly mess with no structure at all. And there were points I scrapped because it didn't fit into the structure I settled on. I'm still unsure if it's any good, and it might be jarring and maybe too long, but it's something I wanted to talk about regardless. I am curious how the comments are going to handle it. I've talked about being queer publicly before, but not in a full review. Those other times I have gotten a positive response, even if not many people saw them. And it does warm my heart, especially ones from other queer people who can find comfort in my channel. But you know how some people can be, though I trust that the majority of you all are good. I'm probably not going to have many other opportunities to talk about this kind of stuff in my videos, so I just want to say that my channel is a safe space for queer people. And for those who would have a problem with that, or would try to make it not a safe place, leave. You're not welcome here. But anyways, Color Splash is now done. This has been another pretty surreal video to make, as I've already talked about how I've had a resentment towards this game for years before I ever played it, and that making the Sticker Star review lifted that resentment. This game I've been avoiding ever since it came out. It always felt so distant, but now I finally played and reviewed it after all this time. While not as important to me as Sticker Star, this is still an important moment for me as a fan of Paper Mario. I feel like when I finished the Sticker Star review, I finally reached the acceptance stage, and playing Color Splash was the moving on. I'm in uncharted waters now, not sure what to expect. As I said before, I'm just gonna go right to Origami King, nothing else in between. So the wait for it will hopefully not be that long. Certainly not like the wait between Sticker Star and Color Splash. I'll be getting to work on that right away after a short break. Also, just to mention it, the Thousand Year Door remake. Yeah, I will cover it in some fashion, but the extent of which I haven't decided yet. That's not until after Origami King, and one more thing after that, though. But with that, I do want to thank IKG Productions for his part talking about the Wonderful 101, and Harain for getting some game footage for me. And of course, my patrons: Enemy, Just a Blank, Kaiju, Neo, Friday, and Major Bluetooth.